barrel. So not its massive rally, a bit of a pause, but still hovering around $25 a barrel. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Now here's Leanne Garrins with more on what's going on around the world. Good morning, Leanne.
Good morning, Anne-Marie, and thank you. President Donald Trump is pushing to get the U.S. economy to reopen. He says Americans should begin returning to their everyday lives. But he's also acknowledging it could lead to even more suffering, including more deaths. Now, drug companies are stepping up efforts to tackle the coronavirus. Gilead is working to ensure access to a treatment drug in Asia, Europe, and indeed the developing world. This comes as coronavirus deaths in India have seen their biggest increase so far. Yesterday, 199 new deaths were recorded. Confirmed cases are nearing 50,000 as the country emerges from a strict 40-day lockdown. And Europe's two most valuable football players lost more than 20% of their potential sale price. That's after the French league decided to cancel the competition because of the coronavirus, according to estimates by KPMG. The value of France international star Kylian Mbappe and Brazil's Neymar has dropped by a combined 86 million euros as the coronavirus hits player valuations. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Leanne Garrins. This is Bloomberg. Matt.
LAG, thank you very much for that. Now, Nathan Hager is prepping for Bloomberg Daybreak in the United States of America.
Yes.
Getting ready to reopen your economy. So much going on. Futures higher.
Right.
What's going on, Nathan?
Well, I mean, you see the futures action on Wall Street, and it seems that investors like the message they're hearing from the President of the United States. His words, we have to open our country. And that's even if it means more people get sick or die from the coronavirus as states start to resume activity. But the latest projections we're hearing from health experts is that we could see an even higher death toll from COVID-19 as that activity begins. So the question this morning is the push to open coming too soon? We're going to look for answers this morning from the investment, health, and political perspectives. Daniel Morris of BNP Paribas is with us, along with Professor Andy Pekos of the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health, and Greg Vallier, Chief U.S. Policy Strategist at AGF Investments, all with us this morning as activity resumes. And we're also going to take a look at how the entertainment industry recovers after Disney's far from happy first quarter. We'll get into those earnings with Matthew Bloxham of Bloomberg Intelligence. All that coming up this morning with me and Karen Moscow. Hope you'll join us for it here on Bloomberg Daybreak. Matt.
Yeah, very, very cool. Especially looking forward to hearing about the House of Mouse. The Disney story is certainly a fascinating one. I guess the coronavirus cuts both ways for them, right? Because you're not going to
theme parks, not going to movie theaters, but staying home watching Disney Plus. That's about it.
Yeah.
I know way too much about Disney Plus. 50 million subscribers to it, and I must say our household.
How many times have you watched Onward, Caroline? How many times?
It's the iPad disappears up the stairs. I think it's not me watching, but
yeah. Well,
all right. So
nice.
Nathan coming up with Karen Moscow on Daybreak. Next, if you're listening on Sirius XM, if you're listening on London DAB digital radio, you'll hear Bloomberg Surveillance. What is Onward? Is it Onward?
You know, he
like
stumped me. Yeah, I think it must be one of the big movies. It's more the comic books, I think, my lot.
You don't watch with.
I don't watch with, no. As I say, the iPads disappear up the stairs. But anyway, let's do less promo for online services in lockdown and talk a bit more about the market, shall we? That critical German court ruling yesterday on the European Central Bank's quantitative easing programme, well, it is worrying some investors. The issue at hand is whether the Pandemic Emergency Purchase Programme constitutes monetary financing. Firms like Aberdeen and UBS suggesting that the ruling could force the ECB to be more careful in how it buys debt going forwards. Joining us now, this morning's Bloomberg Opinion Markets columnist Marcus Ashworth. Marcus, I know you're going to have a robust view about what happened yesterday. How shaky, in your view, does this make the government debt market in Europe now?
I'm just such a shy, retiring type. I can't believe you say that about me. I do have an interesting view on it. In a sense, I think that it's fascinating to see both the European Commission and the European Central Bank, essentially, what's the polite expression, but refuse to pay attention to what the German Constitutional Court is trying to do, which is get it to alter its mandate and do things in a more open and transparent manner, or do it in a way which is not how the ECB is independently thinks it's doing it. It's fascinating today as well. We have a 15-year syndicated sale for Germany. The first time they've done a syndicated sale, where they use a panel of banks rather than their normal auction process to sell debt, because they need to borrow a lot more debt themselves. And the difficulty of this ruling that came out yesterday is that if, in theory, the ECB doesn't do what the German Constitutional Court wants it to do, and it can actually get around it quite easily, but in theory, if it doesn't do it, then it might be forced to sell 600 billion worth of bunds. Just ironically, when Germany itself needs to raise a lot more money. Its debt agency has just come out and said it needs to borrow 50% more, up to 130 billion this year, which is, in normal scheme of things, is absolutely not a problem at all. And in fact, the deal looks like it's going fabulously well. An order book of over 25 billion. It's an odd maturity at 15 years, but it's very expensive to lend to Germany because you are literally paying them to lend the money. But it's interesting times, because we could have all turned upside down. I don't think it'll ever happen. Europe gets around these things, but it is, as some of these fund managers are thinking, not necessarily quite as simple as perhaps everyone thought it was yesterday. Today is a different day.
It is amazing how much Europe tends to fudge everything, right? I mean, the ECB expects us to believe that because they've put a 33% limit, like that means anything at all on their participation in issuance, or because of the capital key, this makes what they're doing not, using monetary policy to finance national budgets of countries that have been fiscally irresponsible from the beginning of time. Like, how does anybody look at that with a straight face? How does the German court, my question is, did the German court really think it was going to look like they were protecting the Constitution instead of playing politics? Because remember, they didn't rule in favor of the plaintiffs, which seems like you have to, close one eye in order to do that.
Well, I think they have to. This is very high level politics. In the context, it's whose law is supreme? Is it German national law, which obviously the Constitutional Court is trying to assert, or is in fact EU law supreme over national law? That is a really, really big question. And at the same time, if the Germans can do this and state their desire to control how the ECB acts, then you look at Poland in particular, which really has crossed that Rubicon into monetary financing between its central bank and its government via its development bank, and indeed possibly Hungary. It opens up a whole box of worms. I think this is why the ECB is perhaps stamping its feet and clearing its ground, because it doesn't want to be beholden to national law and interpretations of one court above what the European Court of Justice.
Certainly not German law, when France, Spain, Italy, and everybody else need money, right?
Yeah, and let's face it, they've got to get out of their own way, because they need to borrow an awful lot of money very soon. The ECB is doing, what it feels as the sole saviour of Europe role, and the last thing it needs is anyone chucking a spanner in the works. This will, as you say, fudge. I mean, when you've got 19 different countries in the euro, the only way around these things is to fudge, and I imagine that's exactly what will happen. The Constitutional Court gave enough wiggle room, and clearly the ECB can justify it wasn't just done for its inflation mandate. It was done to keep a bunch of other stuff, growth, employment, etc., money supply up. So, they will be able to talk their way around it. It's just that they don't want to.
Yeah, just those small matters. Right, thank you so much for joining us this morning. Bloomberg Opinion Markets columnist Marcus Ashworth speaking to us. Now, coming up next, if you're listening in the US, of course, you'll hear at daybreak with Nathan Hager and Karen Moscow. If you're listening on London DAB Digital Radio, it'll be Bloomberg Surveillance with Tom Keane and Francine Lacqua. This is Bloomberg.
Onward.
Are you looking for senior care for your mom?
This is a message from the government about the emergency measures to support the economy during the period of disruption caused by the coronavirus. To help you, your business, and your workers affected, you can apply for cash grants, business rate holidays, statutory sick pay relief packages, as well as the coronavirus job retention and self-employment income support schemes. For information, go to gov.uk/business-support now.
The pressure washer that means your patio is barbecue ready. The 4K projector that brings the thrill of the cinema to you. The yoga mat that turns your lounge into a studio. With a choice of ways to pay, you can make the most of your leisure time. You can say yes when it matters most at very.co.uk. Goods and services provided by Shop Direct Home Shopping Limited. Credit provided by Shop Direct Finance Company Limited.
Picture in your mind a stylish Audi with striking LED headlights, sporty alloy wheels, and some of our most advanced features, including a 10-inch digital cockpit and smart assistant systems like lane departure warning. Picture what that Audi looks like. Now think smaller. The Audi A1. It's not a small car, it's a small Audi. Visit audi.co.uk. Audi. Vorsprung durch Technik.
.com on the Bloomberg Business app and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio.
Live from the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studios, this is Bloomberg Daybreak for Wednesday, May 6, 2020. Coming up this hour.
U.S. futures gain as President Trump ramps up the push to reopen the economy.
Disney shares fall as COVID-19 proves costly for the world's biggest entertainment company.
Up next, we get the first of three grim reports on the employment picture in America.
The latest on New York and New Jersey's efforts to reopen. Plus, the ousted vaccine chief files a whistleblower's complaint against the Trump administration. I'm Michael Barr. More ahead.
I'm John Stashower. In sports, the Jets have signed veteran running back Frank Gore, but they are likely not to have injured wideout Quincy Enunwa next season.
That's all straight ahead on Bloomberg Daybreak. On Bloomberg 1130 New York, Bloomberg 99.1 Washington, D.C., Bloomberg 106.1 Boston, Bloomberg 960 San Francisco, Sirius XM 119, and around the world on BloombergRadio.com and via the Bloomberg Business app.
And good Wednesday morning. I'm Nathan Hager.
And I'm Karen Moscow, and U.S. futures are gaining to start the day. We're coming up to 5:01 on Wall Street, and we check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. S&P futures are up 19 points, Dow futures up 157, and NASDAQ futures up 59. The DAX in Germany is down about 0.1%. CAC in Paris down 0.3%, and the FTSE 100 up 0.4%. 10-year Treasury down 3/32, yield 0.67%. The yield on the 2-year 0.18%. NYMEX crude oil is up 3.5% or 85 cents at $25.41 a barrel. COMEX gold is down about 0.1% and $1.30 at $17.0940 an ounce. The euro 1.0798 against the dollar. The yen is at 106.37. Nathan.
Well, Karen, President Trump is ramping up his push to reopen the economy.
We can't keep our country closed. We have to open our country.
Speaking in Phoenix during his first trip outside Washington in a month, the president encouraged Americans to think of themselves as, quote, warriors as they consider leaving their homes. He also acknowledged those frustrated by stay-at-home orders that remain in place.
People aren't going to accept it. They won't accept it, and they shouldn't accept it. We have a great country. We can't keep it closed. I mean, I've had doctors say, well, why don't we close it for a couple of years? This is the United States of America.
The president says people should return to normal life, even if it leads to more sickness and death.
And as the push to reopen gathers steam, projections for fatalities are on the rise. Bloomberg's John Tucker joins us live with the latest. Good morning, John.
And good morning, Karen. The University of Washington is increasing its estimates for U.S. deaths to more than 130,000. That's more than double earlier projections of around 60,000. Research for the school is often cited by the White House Coronavirus Task Force. Still, the rate of daily infections continues to slow across the United States. The latest data show cases up just 1.9% from the prior day. Meantime, the White House considering disbanding the Coronavirus Task Force as soon as Memorial Day. It plans to transfer responsibility for the government's response to FEMA. In New York, I'm John Tucker, Bloomberg Daybreak.
All right, John, thanks. South Korea was one of the first countries to confront the pandemic. Now it's easing social distancing measures as the virus shows signs of subsiding. Instead, South Korea is pushing for what the government calls everyday distancing. Here with more is Bloomberg's Rashad Salamat reporting from Hong Kong. wrong?
It basically means keep a casual distance while going about your daily activities, but not as intensely as perhaps previously guided. Many companies are turning to those guidelines and using it as a cue to switch over from working from home to returning to the office. In another sign, actually, that the country is normalizing, South Korea's professional baseball league began play. There were no fans. They were cheerleaders. They were all wearing masks, and they were dancing to something like 25,000 empty seats in Seoul's Jamsil Stadium.
South Korea reported just 2 new cases of COVID-19 today. Both were detected using screenings at airports with no local transmissions in cities or towns.
Back here in the U.S., the coronavirus fallout for the world's biggest entertainment company is proving costly. The crisis cost Walt Disney as much as $1.4 billion last quarter, with nearly every part of its business taking a hit. Closed theme parks accounted for $1 billion in lost profit. While most remain shut, Disney is opening its parks in Shanghai on Monday. Eric Hagstrom is an analyst and e-marketer.
Disney's willing to open up these parks early in order to preserve revenue. But Shanghai Disneyland is a relatively small part of their overall parks business, and their parks business in the U.S. still remains closed and likely will remain closed, or at least seeing significantly reduced revenue for the foreseeable future.
Overall, earnings at Disney plunged by more than half in the first quarter, and analysts predict the company will lose hundreds of millions more in the current period. Shares are down more than 1% in early trading.
And we have more earnings this morning rolling in from European banks. In Italy, Unicredit reported a $2.9 billion loss tied to COVID-19 provisions, plus write-downs from its business in Turkey. Still, the bank's main business remained resilient, with income from fees and lending beating estimates. Shares of Unicredit are up about 0.3% in Milan.
In France, Crédit Agricole is setting aside nearly $700 million to cover loans impacted by the pandemic. That's 3 times as much as it booked a year ago. Earnings from the bank were mixed, beating on the top line while posting a drop in net income. Crédit Agricole shares are up 2% in Paris.
Up next, we get results from about 3 dozen companies in the S&P 500, including General Motors. Here with more is Bloomberg's Larry Kofsky.
Like all automakers, GM ended the first quarter at a virtual standstill. Now Bloomberg Intelligence reports it faces the difficult task of restarting operations against the backdrop of an uneven economic reopening. U.S. sales fell 7% in the first quarter, while deliveries in China plunged by 43%. Analysts surveyed by Bloomberg are forecasting a profit of about 30 cents a share on revenue of $31.7 billion. Larry Kofsky, Bloomberg Daybreak.
Larry, thank you. Economic data is also in focus today with the release of ADP's monthly payroll report. It's expected to be a historic reading. Economists predict private companies shed 21 million jobs in April. We get more from Bloomberg's Vinny Dal-Giudice.
Jobless claims have been pouring in by the millions each week, implying staggering losses in today's ADP data. Bloomberg Economics says the figures will zero in on the pandemic's impact by company size, noting safety measures have been especially hard on small firms. For many, working from home isn't an option. In March, the ADP report registered the first decline since 2017. Vinny Dal-Giudice, Bloomberg Daybreak.
All right, Vinny, thank you. And S&P futures, they're up about 18 points. Dow futures up 152 and NASDAQ futures up 57. The 10-year Treasury down 4/32, the yield 0.67%, and the yield on the 2-year at 0.18%. The euro 1.0801 against the dollar, and the yen 106.35. Straight ahead, we have the latest world and national news. This is Bloomberg.
Thank you, Karen. It's 5:07 on Wall Street now, and Michael Barr has more on what's going on around the world. Good morning, Michael.
Good morning, Nathan. New York Governor Andrew Cuomo says his state has a detailed plan to reopen region by region. The plan, which would likely allow counties in upstate New York to open first, requires local officials to track daily metrics of COVID-19. To reopen, Cuomo said regions must see a 2-week decline in hospitalizations and deaths. Right now, New York State remains on pause through May 15th. The 230 new daily deaths in the state were up slightly from the previous day, but far lower than the daily peak of 799 on April 8th. Cuomo argues that the human toll to reopen outweighs the economic cost.
The faster we reopen, the lower the economic cost, but the higher the human cost, because the more lives lost. That, my friends, is the decision we are really making.
New York's hospitalization rates continue to drop with 659 new admissions. That is the lowest number since March. New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio is firing back at President Trump. The president said to the New York Post that he did not want to give COVID-19 bailouts to states run by Democrats, calling them poorly run and cash-strapped.
I'll give him another chance to show that there's a beating heart there. But these comments today show me something very cold and very, very unfair towards the people he grew up around.
Governors representing both political parties have been asking the federal government for more state funds. New Jersey Governor Phil Murphy says residents there need to keep adhering to the stay-at-home mandate.
Non-essential retail, I hear morning, noon, and night. I appreciate all that. I appreciate all the inputs and the wisdom on beaches. We still have people getting sick, going to the hospital, and sadly, over 300 today, we're reporting in a minute, have died.
A federal judge ruled the New York Democratic presidential primary must be held June 23rd after all. Democrats on the State Board of Elections voted to scrap it because of coronavirus and because Joe Biden was unopposed. A senior government scientist alleges the Trump administration failed to prepare for the onslaught of the coronavirus, then sought a fix by rushing an unproven drug to patients. Rick Bright filed a whistleblower's complaint. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Mike LaBar. This is Bloomberg. Nathan.
Thank you, Michael. 5:09 on Wall Street. Time for the Bloomberg Sports Update. Good morning, John Stashauer.
Good morning, Nathan. Frank Gore will turn 37 next week. He's been an NFL running back for 15 years, and in every season he has rushed for at least 500 yards. That's a record. He's the third leading rusher in NFL history, topped by only Emmitt Smith and Walter Payton. And Gore is now a Jet, signed a one-year contract to back up Le'Veon Bell. Gore was with the 49ers when Jets coach Adam Gase was a low-level assistant, and he was with the Dolphins in 2018 when Gase was the head coach. As for Jets wide receiver Quincy Enunwa, you have to wonder if his career is over at age 27. Had a great 2018 season, cashed in with a $33 million extension, but Enunwa missed all of 2017 and all but one game last season with a neck injury, and it's already been determined he won't play at all in 2020. For those really starved to see baseball, the ESPN, in the middle of the night anyway, is showing the Korean Baseball League. Opening day did not include fans, although there were cut-out pictures of people's faces taped to the seats. The umpires wore masks inside their normal masks. No high fives allowed, no spitting. That's a big deal in baseball. South Korea was ready to play ball. There were only 3 new cases of coronavirus yesterday in the entire country. Here, who knows, despite a lot of rumors of MLB's plans to return. Tony Clark, the head of the Players Association, says he has yet to ever receive a formal proposal. Rafael Nadal tells a newspaper in his native Spain that when it comes to tennis, he's in favor of not playing again until 2021. U.S. Open, as of now, still on for late August. The French Open was moved to September. John Stashauer, Bloomberg Sports. Nathan.
Well, John, the MLB may still be on hold, but the Houston Astros sign-stealing controversy is not going away. The club is now facing a consolidated class action by 3 groups who say if they'd known about the sign-stealing scheme, its cover-up, and subsequent baseball investigation, they never would have bought tickets from the Astros. They also claim the team is refusing to refund season ticket payments in the face of the coronavirus shutdown. This is Bloomberg.
Imagine being denied an apartment because of your religion, or your race, or because you have children, or a disability.
It's so wrong. Yes, but who has the power to stop this?
You do. Each of us has the power. The law is on your side. It's illegal for landlords to discriminate because of race, color, religion, sex, national origin, disability, or familial status. If you suspect that you have experienced housing discrimination, file a complaint with HUD immediately so we can investigate it. Fair housing is your right.
Use it.
To learn more, visit HUD.gov/fair housing. That's HUD.gov/fair housing. Or call 1-800-669-9777. 1-800-669-9777. A public service message from HUD in partnership with the National Fair Housing Alliance.
Why do hedge funds and other alternative managers rely on Pershing for a highly personalized experience? Mark Alderati, a managing director at BNY Mellon's Pershing and head of Prime Services, explains.
In today's fast-paced environment, where the only constants are change and volatility, you need a prime broker who's both steady and agile, focused on supporting your needs so that you can focus on growing your business and producing results. Exceptional client service and advocating for our clients is at the core of what we do. Our award-winning high-touch team is just one of the benefits of working with BNY Mellon. We help alternative investment managers create great experiences for their clients. Whether it's customized financing, securities lending solutions, platform access, or outsourced trading, BNY Mellon's Pershing is a prime broker who's committed to this business and dedicated to meeting your evolving demands.
To learn more about the unique and industry-leading solutions for hedge funds and other alternative managers, visit Pershing.com. Pershing LLC. Member FINRA, NYSE, SIPC.
Have you wanted to speak a new language?
Switch on Acorn TV, the brand new streaming service featuring world-class TV from Britain and beyond. Watch exclusive premieres like the colourful crime drama Queens of Mystery.
Once you have eliminated the impossible, whatever remains, however improbable, must be the truth.
And fan favourites like Inspector George Gently.
I'm just an old copper doing his job.
If you love drama with a little mystery thrown in, enjoy 30 days free with code ACORN30. Then just $4.99 a month. No adverts, no contract, cancel anytime. Join online today at acorn.tv.
Did you know that players of People's Postcode Lottery have raised over £500 million for charities and good causes? They've also won £63 million in prizes so far this year, and it could be your postcode next. Visit postcodelottery.co.uk/radio before midnight on the 21st of May to play in the June draws. PPL manage lotteries on behalf of good causes 16+. Conditions apply. Play responsibly.
The trampoline that makes Dad feel like a kid again. The projector that turns film night into outdoor cinema night. The hot tub that transforms your garden into a spa retreat. With a choice of ways to pay, you can make the most of family time. You can say yes when it matters most at very.co.uk. Goods and services provided by Shop Direct Home Shopping Limited. Credit provided. Subject to status by Shop Direct Finance Company Limited. 18+.
Somebody has a stroke every 5 minutes in the UK. With time, though, courage, and the right support, lives can be rebuilt. Mine was. But with this current crisis, I can't imagine how much harder it must be for the stroke survivor and their family, more isolated and alone than ever. The Stroke Association is working tirelessly to support the NHS and develop new ways to rebuild lives. To find out more or to donate, search Stroke Association now.
Here's Emily Chang.
The COVID-19 pandemic has hit the music industry hard, canceling production, halting live concerts. I sat down for an exclusive and wide-ranging interview with Spotify CEO Daniel Ek.
We've been listening to a lot of Spotify Kids. Stuck inside. What's on your pandemic playlist? I know you got kids too.
On our playlist right now, it's obviously a lot of Frozen and the Trolls soundtrack.
Okay, too. Okay.
Yes.
So what is it like running a $26 billion company in the middle of a pandemic?
The crazy thing, I think, for us is just how global the business is. We're in close to 80 countries around the world. So we're dealing with all these various stages of the pandemic. And what's just fascinating for me has been just seeing how the consumption habits have just shifted overnight. I don't think we've ever seen anything like this since the inception of the company, of just how people changed habits, changed what they're listening to, how they're engaging with that content. So it's just been responding to this new reality that we're living in, while at the same time making it culturally appropriate.
Hear more interviews like this one on Bloomberg Television, streaming live on Bloomberg.com and on the Bloomberg mobile app, or check your local cable listings. Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow. U.S. stock index futures on the rise after President Trump pushed again to reopen the economy, while stocks in Europe turned higher even amid more dismal economic data and mixed corporate earnings. The dollar is climbing, treasuries are steady, and West Texas oil continues its rally that had doubled prices in 5 days. We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. S&P futures up 21 points, Dow futures up 175, and NASDAQ futures up 69. The DAX in Germany is now little changed. 10-year Treasury down 430 seconds, yield 0.67%. Yield on the 2-year, 0.18%. NYMEX crude oil is up 3.6% or 89 cents at $25.45 a barrel. And COMEX gold is down about 0.1% on $1.30 at $17.0930 an ounce. The euro 1.0795 against the dollar. British pound 1.2371. And the yen's at 106.35. And that's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Now here's Michael Barr with more on what's going on around the world. Michael, good morning.
Good morning, Karen. President Donald Trump acknowledged that easing lockdown restrictions will result in some people being, in his words, affected badly, but said it is imperative to get the country going again. The president toured a plant in Arizona that makes protective equipment for healthcare workers. During a tour of a Honeywell plant, the president donned safety goggles, but no face mask. As the push to reopen gathers steam, projections for fatalities are on the rise. Bloomberg's John Tucker in New York joins us live with the latest.
And Michael, the rate of daily infections continues to slow across the U.S. Meantime, the University of Washington, which is often cited by the White House officials, is more than doubling its estimate for U.S. deaths to more than 130,000. The White House is considering disbanding the coronavirus task force as soon as Memorial Day. And the UK now has the most deaths in Europe now, surpassing Italy. John Tucker, Bloomberg Daybreak.
Thank you, John. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg. Nathan.
All right, Michael, thank you. It's 5:19 on Wall Street, live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers studios. This is Bloomberg Daybreak, and Daniel Morris joins us now, Senior Investment Strategist at BNP Paribas. Nice to talk with you this morning, Daniel. We just heard the latest headlines there. It seems as though investors have to weigh the push to reopen the economy from President Trump with the risk of more sickness from the coronavirus. Where do you see markets going? Where do you see the reaction?
We think ultimately there's certainly a risk of a correction around all of this, because I think there's not only the risk that you mentioned that we see an increase in infections and that necessitates a reimposition to some degree of the restrictive measures, and we don't think the market's priced for that. There's another scenario that still would lead to weaker markets, which is we don't necessarily see a big increase in infections, but we find that consumers just are still very reticent to go out and consume again. They're not going to quickly go back to restaurants even if they're open. They're not going to start traveling again. And we don't see the increase in activity and ultimately the increase in earnings per share for companies that seems to be priced in the market.
When you talk about the possibility of a correction, are you thinking the markets test their lows from March?
It certainly seems possible to us. I mean, if you look at the GDP forecast consensus, from different places, it's still down 5% for the year. And it's hard to square a market that at this point is only down about 15% after the rebound we've seen since March, with a contraction in GDP that's bigger than you had during the global financial crisis. So that does seem to be a disconnect. If those GDP forecasts turn out to be correct, the market seems vulnerable to us.
Could we see a further evidence of that disconnect when we get the April jobs number on Friday? We're going to get payrolls this morning from ADP.
Well, that one's probably going to be less indicative because we kind of have a pretty good sense of what that number is going to be like, or hopefully we do, given the data we've had over the last several weeks with new jobless claims. I think the risk is probably a little bit further out, actually, because we're not really going to know how the economy responds to any loosening of restrictions, and we're not going to see any increase in infections for several weeks. So I think we're going to be in a bit of wait-and-see mode for the next several weeks. The markets may continue to rise, kind of on the assumption that things are going to be fine. but a month from now, the data may not be quite so supportive.
Oh, we saw a bit of a pullback in the market before the close yesterday when the Vice Chair of the Federal Reserve, Richard Clarida, said the economy could need more government support. Does that change your outlook for what recovery might look like in the second half?
Well, yes and no. To the degree that they think more support is needed, if that's premised on growth is weaker than we anticipate, then, that's kind of the more negative scenario that we're worried about. On the other hand, clearly the markets have been happy when the Fed announces more support or when the government announces another stimulus package, and so that's all good. But it all depends whether that's going to be enough to offset the contraction that we're seeing elsewhere. Don't forget in the first quarter, you had U.S. consumer demand fall by 5%. And, those are big numbers that you can't replace very easily, even with trillion-dollar stimulus packages.
Are you anticipating further headwinds from earnings as the earnings season continues?
Well, the pleasant surprise, if you can try to find pleasant surprises in this environment, is that the earnings season hasn't been as bad as feared. You've had, a higher than average positive earnings surprises for the season, so that's good. That said, we know second quarter is going to be quite challenging. We're probably more worried, though, about the outlook in the third and the fourth quarter. If you look at current consensus estimates, earnings are expected to grow 50% from the end of the second quarter through the end of the year. So essentially that's, the analysts, the markets are assuming that earnings are going to get back pretty much to where they were at the end of 2019 by the end of this year. So all the losses that we're going to see in earnings in the first half, more or less, are going to all come back in the second half. And it's that assumption that we're nervous about. Again, is activity going to be able to rebound that quickly, that far? And if you look, for example, in China, you would say it's not obvious that it will.
All right, we'll leave it there for now. Thank you so much for this, Daniel. Appreciate talking with you this morning. Daniel Morris is a senior investment strategist at BNP Paribas. And taking a look at the markets at the moment, they are moving higher this morning with S&P futures up 23 points, Dow futures ahead by 190, and NASDAQ futures a gain of 72 points as President Trump signals that we have to open the country, even if it means further health risk from the coronavirus. The 10-year is down 4/32. The yield on the 10-year Treasury note 0.67%, 2-year yield 0.19%. And you're listening to Bloomberg Daybreak.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. The U.S. stock indicators this morning are pointing to more gains at the open today after President Donald Trump again pushed to reopen the economy. Stocks in Europe are drifting amid mixed corporate earnings and more dismal economic data. Here in the U.S. today, we get ADP's private payroll report. It's expected to show 2.1 million jobs lost in April. The government's jobs report is due on Friday. Among companies scheduled to report their earnings today are CVS, Wendy's, General Motors, Papa John's, T-Mobile, and Hyatt. Disney investors are getting a taste of just how bad the coronavirus pandemic will be for the world's biggest entertainment company. The crisis cost Disney as much as $1.4 billion in lost profit last quarter, and $1 billion of that came from shuttered theme parks alone. But almost every part of the business is taking a hit. There was a bright spot in Disney's report. Its new streaming service already has 54.5 million subscribers, surpassing the company's own Hulu service. Gina Cervetti, Bloomberg Radio.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology, makes innovation happen. The university helped biomedical engineering professor Tara Alvarez launch a startup that may revolutionize vision therapy.
Our startup through NJIT is called Oculomotor Technology. We create virtual reality vision therapy in a head-mounted display. So it's gaming, and basically we're sugarcoating the therapy so that children and young adolescents don't even realize they're doing therapy. To accomplish this, we need biomedical engineers, which are here on NJIT campus, computer scientists, artists, people that are into story development, and then we're collaborating with a lot of the large pediatric medical centers. This idea of a startup culture is extremely important to not just NJIT and the National Science Foundation, but also to the U.S. as a societal whole.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Learn more at njit.edu.
not completing high school is more of a social thing.
Did you know that players of People's Postcode Lottery have raised over £500 million for charities and good causes? They've also won £63 million in prizes so far this year, and it could be your postcode next. Visit postcodelottery.co.uk/radio before midnight on the 21st of May to play in the June draws. PPL manage lotteries on behalf of good causes. 16 plus. Conditions apply. Play responsibly.
The trampoline that makes Dad feel like a kid again. The projector that turns film night into outdoor cinema night. The hot tub that transforms your garden into a spa retreat. With a choice of ways to pay, you can make the most of family time. You can say yes when it matters most at very.co.uk. Goods and services provided by Shop Direct Home Shopping Limited. Credit provided. Subject to status by Shop Direct Finance Company Limited. 18 plus.
Somebody has a stroke every 5 minutes in the UK. With time, though, courage, and the right support, lives can be rebuilt. Mine was. But with this current crisis, I can't imagine how much harder it must be for the stroke survivor and their family, more isolated and alone than ever. The Stroke Association is working tirelessly to support the NHS and develop new ways to rebuild lives. To find out more or to donate, search Stroke Association now.
A half-price dream holiday, wouldn't want to miss that. A takeaway for free, wouldn't want to miss that. And 30 gigs data for just £10 a month on Smarty Mobile. You definitely don't want to miss that. Our Smarty SIM comes packed with 30 gigs of data and unlimited calls and texts for just £10 a month on a 1-month plan. That's why Smarty won Best Value SIM-only network in the USwitch Mobile Awards 2020. Don't miss out. Search Smarty Mobile. Smarty. Simple, honest mobile. Smarty.co.uk.
This is an important message from the government. For now, we must all still stay at home. It can be hard, but it's making a difference. So please keep going for the ones you love. Keep going for every key worker on the front line as they keep going for us. Keep going because together we will beat the virus. To all of you making sacrifices every day, thank you. Stay home, protect the NHS, save lives.
Interactive Broker Studio in New York. Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM Channel 119 and around the globe. The Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Daybreak.
It is 5:30 on Wall Street. Good morning. I'm Karen Moscow.
And I'm Nathan Hager. Bloomberg Daybreak brought to you by BNY Mellon's Pershing. Learn why the world's most sophisticated advisory firms and broker-dealers rely on Pershing to help them improve profitability, create efficiency, attract talent, and manage risk at Pershing.com.
We're just about 4 hours away from the opening of U.S. trading. Let's get you up to date on the news you need to know at this hour. U.S. futures are gaining as the White House ramps up the push to get America back to work. President Trump is removing notes of caution from his rhetoric as he fixes course to reopen the economy.
We have a great country. We can't keep it closed. I mean, I've had doctors say, well, why don't we close it for a couple of years? This is the United States of America.
Speaking in Phoenix during his first trip outside Washington in a month, the president encouraged Americans to return to normal life. He also acknowledged the effort could lead to more sickness and death.
Will some people be affected? Yes. Will some people be affected badly? Yes. But we have to get our country open, and we have to get it open soon.
President Trump says he's pivoting to phase 2 of the nation's response to the pandemic, a step that will include disbanding the White House Coronavirus Task Force as soon as Memorial Day.
As the push to reopen gathers steam, projections for fatalities are on the rise, and Bloomberg's John Tucker joins us live with the latest. John, good morning.
And good morning, Karen. The University of Washington increasing its estimate for U.S. deaths to more than 130,000. That's more than double earlier projections, around 60,000. Researchers for the school are often cited by the White House Coronavirus Task Force. Still, the rate of daily infections continues to slow across the U.S. The latest data show cases up just 1.9% from the prior day. In New York, I'm John Tucker, Bloomberg Daybreak.
Thank you, John. The COVID-19 fallout for the world's biggest entertainment company is proving costly. The crisis cost Walt Disney as much as $1.4 billion last quarter, with nearly every part of its business taking a hit. Here with more is Bloomberg's Charlie Pellet.
The force was not with the world's largest entertainment company. It was bludgeoned on all sides by the coronavirus. At 60 cents a share, earnings trailed the 86-cent average of analyst estimates. The worst performance by far came from the theme park division. Operating income there tumbled to $639 million from $1.5 billion last year. Charlie Pellet, Bloomberg Daybreak.
All right, Charlie, thank you. And shares of Disney down 1.4% in early trading. Futures, meanwhile, are moving higher. S&P futures up 23 points, Dow futures up 197, and NASDAQ futures up 71. The DAX in Germany is little change. 10-year Treasury down 3/32, yield 0.67%, and NYMEX crude oil up 3.25%. Straight ahead, the latest world and national news. This is Bloomberg.
Thanks, Karen. 5:33 on Wall Street, and Michael Barr is here with more on what's going on around the world. Michael?
Thank you very much, Nathan. The New York governor, Andrew Cuomo, says the national debate over when to reopen outbreak-ravaged economies boils down to the value placed on people's lives. Cuomo made the argument as political pressure intensifies to relax restrictions, keeping people at home and off the job.
They went to great lengths initially to minimize it. It then became undeniable. They dealt with it and then left it to the states, but they won it over. That is clear. But the virus doesn't care. The virus doesn't listen. This is not a marketing situation. You can't talk your way around this.
Cuomo has opted for a slower approach that will allow parts of the state to phase in economic activity later this month if they meet and maintain benchmarks. New Jersey Governor Phil Murphy says residents there need to keep adhering to the stay-at-home mandates.
If you're one of the folks out there, as I am, by the way, itching to get things back open again, 385 people entered the hospital yesterday in New Jersey with COVID-19.
The stay-at-home restrictions are in effect in New Jersey until further notice. California Governor Gavin Newsom has laid out a bit more detail on the slow partial reopening on Friday. Bloomberg's Ed Baxter has the story.
Newsom says he has to balance getting back to business and the real threat to health.
We're not going back to normal. It's back to a new normal with adaptations and modifications until we get to immunity, until we get to a vaccine. We'll get there. That's coming. That will happen. The question is, what happens in between?
He says this will look more like widespread curbside pickup for most businesses in the beginning. In San Francisco, I'm Ed Baxter, Bloomberg Daybreak.
The ousted vaccine chief fired from his job during the coronavirus pandemic says his early warnings about the outbreak were ignored. Rick Bright alleges the Trump administration failed to prepare for the onslaught of the coronavirus, then sought a fix by rushing an unproven drug to patients. Bright filed a whistleblower complaint. The Supreme Court says Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg has been hospitalized with an infection caused by a gallstone. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg. Nathan.
Okay, Michael, thanks. It's 5:35 on Wall Street. Let's get the Bloomberg Sports Update now from John Stetschauer.
Nathan, the Jets have added the third leading rusher in NFL history. Frank Gore, who turns 37 next week, has had an NFL record 15 consecutive seasons of at least 500 rushing yards. He'll be the backup to Le'Veon Bell. He has a history with Jets coach Adam Gase, both with the 49ers and a couple of years ago in Miami. Another veteran running back, Marshawn Lynch, says he's in talks about playing again with Seattle. Lynch has already come out of retirement twice, including to rejoin the Seahawks last December. The Giants have added a quarterback, Cooper Rush, out of Central Michigan, who's only thrown one NFL pass. He was just released by Dallas after the Cowboys signed veteran Andy Dalton. Jason Garrett is the Giants' new offensive coordinator, and he coached Rush in Dallas. The Giants now have 5 QBs on their roster. Daniel Jones is the starter, and Eli Manning told SiriusXM Radio he believes Jones will thrive now that Eli is no longer on the team. He said Jones now knows he's the man and there'll be no distractions. The time of the NBA shutdown, the Knicks and Nets both had interim head coaches, so both looking for a coach for next season, and both could have their eyes on the same guy. Tom Thibodeau had success in Chicago, not as much at Minnesota. He used to be a Knicks assistant, and he was represented by the new Knicks president, Leon Rose, but the Nets might want him too. Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving were on the Olympic team that had Thibodeau as an assistant. May 6th, this date in sports history, 1954, an event that was a huge deal at the time. In Oxford, England, Roger Bannister became the first to ever run the mile in under 4 minutes. John Stashower, Bloomberg Sports. Neighbor.
Thank you, John. It's 5:37 on Wall Street. Time now for the Tri-State Business Report. Here's Bloomberg's Ed Corey.
The New York State Common Retirement Fund is putting $50 million toward the Federal Paycheck Protection Program. Under the PPP, employers can get loans that'll be forgiven by the federal government if employees are kept on the payroll for 8 weeks and the money's used for payroll, rent, mortgage interest, or utilities. New York summer camps may be smaller and screen each child and staffer for coronavirus this year. Those are just some of the ideas camps across New York and the country are considering, according to Lower Hudson, as they work with state and federal officials to determine whether they can safely open this summer. Plans for a 122-unit apartment complex adjacent to the South Norwalk train station took a step forward last night. The Common Council Public Works Committee unanimously advanced the developer's request for a temporary right of access at 30 Monroe Street for the project. That's your Bloomberg Tri-State Business Report. I'm Ed Corey.
Thanks, Ed. 5:38 on Wall Street. Bloomberg Radio is on the air from San Francisco to New York, London to Hong Kong. Let's check in with our global news team for some of the top stories heard on our 300 affiliate radio stations around the world.
I'm Jeff Bellinger, and on WIOD in Miami, I'm reporting Walt Disney lost up to $1.4 billion in the last quarter. That was largely due to theme park closures.
I'm Gina Cervetti, and for WCCO in Minneapolis, I'm reporting that U.S. meat workers are quitting as coronavirus-ridden plants restart operations.
I'm Caroline Hepk on Bloomberg DAB Digital Radio in London. We're reporting on the UK becoming the worst hit country in Europe for virus deaths.
I'm Steve Podoskin on KNX in Los Angeles. We're talking about the video streaming face-off, now down to Netflix versus Disney.
I'm Ed Corey on WWJ in Detroit. I'm reporting General Motors is in talks for a new $2 billion loan.
And those are some of the stories our 2,700 Bloomberg journalists and analysts are working on this morning around the world. It's 5:39 on Wall Street, and the latest edition of Bloomberg Business Week is online now with the cover on Exxon's fall from oil juggernaut to mediocre company. Terminal customers can receive a complimentary subscription at MAG Go, and you can listen to Business Week with Carol Massar and Jason Kelly right here on Bloomberg Radio and watch it on YouTube weekdays from 2 to 6 p.m. Wall Street time. Get global business, finance, and tech news on your TV, computer, or mobile device at youtube.com. Search Bloomberg Global News. Now, some other stories we're following. Elon Musk has cleared the last hurdle to collect the first chunk of a monster pay award. The Tesla CEO can now unlock stock options valued at just over $700 million. The payout is based on Tesla's market cap, sales, and earnings. If all goes well, Musk could eventually earn more than $50 billion in awards. BMW is joining other automakers in lowering its profit outlook for the year. The company says fallout from the coronavirus is lasting longer than expected. BMW predicts the second quarter will be even worse than the first. And shares of Beyond Meat are up nearly 7% in early trading. Sales at the company outpaced estimates. It sold more product to supermarkets as the pandemic closed restaurants across the country. S&P futures higher by 22 points. Dow futures up 190. NASDAQ futures a gain of 71 points. You're listening to Bloomberg Daybreak.
Business is constantly evolving. Is your financial printer evolving to keep ahead of the curve? At Command Financial, we are redefining financial printing by providing industry-leading expertise, leveraging technology, and honing processes and best practices. Every day, Command helps SEC registrants, as well as members of their working groups, including securities attorneys and investment bankers, prepare, file, and disseminate regulatory and disclosure documents, such as registration statements, M&A documents, and mutual fund prospectuses and reports. Command provides a full range of services to help you effectively complete your deal, meet your disclosure requirements, and achieve your shareholder communications objectives. Visit our website at commandfinancial.com and learn how we're evolving, not only with the times, but also with your business requirements. Command Financial, redefining financial printing.
Elite advisory firms rely on BNY Mellon's Pershing to meet the needs of their most complex clients. Karen Novak, Chief Operating Officer at Pershing Advisor Solutions, explains how.
At BNY Mellon's Pershing, we bring customized insights and strategies to help you grow your advisory business and stay on the leading edge. We can support the needs of your most sophisticated clients with a full range of investment and wealth management solutions, from access to private banking to consolidated bank and brokerage custody. Learn why so many of the largest advisory firms turn to us for the financial strength and high-touch service that BNY Mellon's Pershing can provide. Are you well positioned to stand out from your competition?
Learn more at Pershing.com or call 800-445-4467. Brokerage custody provided by Pershing LLC and other services provided by Pershing Advisor Solutions LLC. Both members of FINRA and SIPC. Private banking and bank custody provided by BNY Mellon NA. Member FDIC.
This is your Bloomberg Real Estate. Somebody has a stroke every 5 minutes in the UK. With time, though, courage, and the right support, lives can be rebuilt. Mine was. But with this current crisis, I can't imagine how much harder it must be for the stroke survivor and their family, more isolated and alone than ever. The Stroke Association is working tirelessly to support the NHS and develop new ways to rebuild lives. To find out more or to donate, search Stroke Association now.
Picture in your mind a stylish Audi with striking LED headlights, sporty alloy wheels, and some of our most advanced features, including a 10-inch digital cockpit and smart assistance systems like lane departure warning. Picture what that Audi looks like. Now think smaller. The Audi A1. It's not a small car, it's a small Audi. Visit audi.co.uk. Audi. Vorsprung durch Technik.
When next in Asda, why not try our new mobile Scan and Go app? Simply download the app, scan your shop with your mobile, and pack as you go. Then head to the self-checkout to pay. Quick, easy, and contact-free, so you have more time to get your cook on. Asda. Mobile data charges may apply. Suitable for iOS 9 and Android 5 or above. Selected stores subject to availability.
We're all having to get used to the new normal. And at Birkbeck University, we're experts at being adaptable. As London's evening university, we've been flexing around the lives of busy commuters for nearly 200 years. And you can find everything you need to secure your place for autumn online. From expert advice to virtual tours, a live chat with our students and course applications. Make the new normal, studying for the career that you really want. Search Birkbeck, and it's new problem solved.
TSB believe in people helping people. So if for whatever reason you become an innocent victim of fraud, they will refund every penny you lost from your TSB account. Find out more about their fraud refund guarantee at tsb.co.uk. Terms and conditions apply.
This is a message from the government to all essential workers. You're doing vital jobs to keep our country going, and you can now get tested for coronavirus. From health professionals to emergency services, from delivery drivers to grocery workers, from teachers to care workers. Tests are available for you and anyone in your household who has symptoms. For a full list of all essential workers eligible and how to get a test, go to gov.uk/coronavirus.
TikTok on Twitter, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in over 120 countries. This is Bloomberg Radio. Now, a global news update.
Special report, coronavirus update. President Trump from Arizona.
Our country has to go back to being our country again. You have people that are not going to stand for this, and I understand them very well. And we are going to put out little embers and little fires and maybe some big fires, but we still have to go back to work.
On ABC News, Trump says we have no choice but to reopen our nation despite COVID-19. Reportedly, the White House Coronavirus Task Force will wind down its work inside a couple weeks.
Well, I suspect even if they do that, we're going to continue to work with the federal agencies, especially FEMA and HHS and others, in order to continue to prosecute this war on the coronavirus here in Louisiana and around the country.
Louisiana Governor John Bell Edwards' Asian stock markets gained as hopes for a global economic recovery rose after more governments ease antivirus controls. I'm John Trout.
Why all the top-tier experts? Because business is not a magic trick.
Give us a sense of the economic backdrop.
Bloomberg Markets.
Which financial records are these?
Weekday mornings at 10 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio. Bloomberg, the world is listening. Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow, and U.S. stock index futures are gaining this morning after President Trump pushed again to reopen the economy, while stocks in Europe turned higher even after more dismal economic data and some mixed corporate earnings. We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. S&P futures up 22 points, Dow futures up 191, NASDAQ futures up 72. The DAX in Germany is little change. 10-year Treasury down 3/32, yield 0.67%, yield on the 2-year 0.18%. NYMEX crude oil up 2.6%, up 64 cents at $25.20 a barrel. COMEX gold is down 0.1%, down $2.50 at $17.0820 an ounce. The euro 1.0789 against the dollar. British pound 1.2374, and the yen is at 106.28. And that's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Now here's Michael Barr with more on what's going on around the world. Michael.
Karen, President Donald Trump acknowledged that easing lockdown restrictions will result in some people being, in his words, affected badly, but said it is imperative to get the country going again. The president toured a plant in Arizona that makes protective equipment for healthcare workers. During a tour of a Honeywell plant, the president donned safety goggles, but no face mask. As the push to reopen gathers steam, projections for fatalities are on the rise. Bloomberg's John Tucker in New York joins us live with the latest.
Yeah, and Michael, the rate of daily infections continue to slow across the U.S., but the University of Washington, which is often cited by White House officials, is more than doubling its estimate for U.S. deaths to more than 130,000. The White House is considering disbanding the coronavirus task force as soon as Memorial Day, and the U.K. now has the most deaths in Europe, surpassing Italy. John Tucker, Bloomberg Daybreak.
Thank you, John. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg. Nathan.
Thank you, Michael. It is 5:49 on Wall Street, live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers studios. This is Bloomberg Daybreak. Let's take a closer look at Walt Disney's earnings this morning. The company is far from the happiest place on earth for investors after a quarter crippled by the coronavirus. Let's get more now from Bloomberg Intelligence media analyst Matthew Bloxham joining us this morning. Nice to talk with you this morning, but obviously not so nice earnings for the Walt Disney Company, with earnings falling by more than half in the quarter, far worse than analysts expected. What stands out most to you from the latest earnings from Disney?
Yeah, well, hi there. I mean, I think what stands out most is it's going to get a lot worse, I think, before it gets better. This is a company exposed to all those bad sectors: travel, entertainment, social gatherings, movies. So, I think really that kind of $1.4 billion hit to profits in the March quarter only really affected, 3 or 4 weeks at most. So, April's a write-off, and it's really going to depend a lot on how quickly, not just the US, but the rest of the world comes out of lockdown. I think the interesting thing is that they pointed to the May 11th reopening of their Shanghai theme park. So that's going to be very crucial, I think, in terms of how well that goes to give investors some optimism about whether they really can get that big segment up and running, within a realistic time frame.
Yeah, it's not just theme parks reopening, but I would imagine productions reopening as well for all the movies and TV show projects that have been put on hold for the last few months.
Yeah, that's right. And, obviously, that hits them in so many ways. They haven't even cut pricing on their ESPN sports programming yet. They're under pressure to do that. And it's going to really create this kind of big delay and backlog in terms of getting existing productions into movie theaters. But then, is there going to be then a big gap 6-12 months down the line when, all these films they would have been producing this year just haven't been produced? So, yeah, that's going to create some headaches for them. So there's still a lot of issues for them to work through.
The company is cutting its dividend. It's already slashed salaries. Is further cost cutting going to be something Disney's going to have to consider to get through this?
I think it's definitely possible. Yeah, like they've furloughed 120,000 staff. They've cut almost $1 billion off the capex program for this year. I think no company really wants to kind of go too far too quickly because they just don't know how deep and how long this is going to last. But it's certainly a possibility if we don't see a fairly quick and smooth exit out of lockdowns across the world.
With so much uncertainty about how the consumer will react in the theme parks, where do you see potential growth opportunities for Disney at a time like this? Is the Disney Plus streaming enough?
Good question whether it's enough or not, but it's certainly something. And obviously, there are almost 55 million subscribers to that Disney Plus platform now, and Hulu's doing better than expected too. To put it in context, they've got to that 55 million within 6 or 7 months. They were originally planning to get to 60 to 90 million within by 2024, so kind of 3 or 4 years out. So they're well ahead of that. That might mean that what was about an $800 million loss on those streaming platforms in the March quarter could quickly turn into something that at least isn't a drag on profits anymore. So that might be something that helps them out, and it could also potentially be a different way for them to get some of their film content out there and monetized whilst the movie theaters are still shut down. I think that would be quite contentious with some of the movie theaters, but it might be a way for them to create some kind of new premium SVOD platform to get some of those shows out there and making money.
Bloomberg Intelligence media analyst Matthew Bloxham with us this morning on Disney earnings. Thank you, Matthew, for being with us. And taking a look at Disney in the pre-market right now, Karen, shares are down 1.5%.
All right, Nathan, thank you. It is 5:53 on Wall Street. It's time for the Bloomberg Law Report. It's brought to you by American Arbitration Association. Business disputes are inevitable. Resolve faster with the American Arbitration Association, the global leader in alternative dispute resolution for over 90 years. More at adr.org. Let's get to the legal stories we're watching this morning from Bloomberg's Jeff Bellinger.
Federal courts are seeking more than $36 million to address coronavirus-related issues, including enhanced courtroom cleaning and teleworking infrastructure. Justin Walker, President Trump's nominee for a seat on the Court of Appeals for the D.C. Circuit, now gets a well-qualified rating from the American Bar Association. A federal judge in Missouri dismissed a lawsuit brought by Smithfield meatpacking plant workers who accused the company of not protecting them from the coronavirus. The judge ruled that OSHA has jurisdiction in the matter.
Bloomberg Law. Everything you need on one legal research platform. Guidance, analysis, and Bloomberg Market Intelligence. Find out more at BloombergLaw.com.
And now another legal story we're watching centers on the Chief Judge of the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals. He's asking Chief Justice John Roberts to have another court investigate allegations that Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell pressured a judge to retire in order to open up the seat for McConnell's protege, Judge Justin Walker. For more on the matter, Bloomberg's June Grasso speaks to Carl Tobias, a professor at the University of Richmond Law School.
Carl, how unusual is it for the Chief Judge of a federal appeals court to ask the Chief Justice for an investigation?
It is unusual, but Judge Srinivasan is being very cautious because, of course, Justin Walker would be a colleague on the same court. And I think that's the reason he's asked Chief Justice Roberts to reassign this to another judicial circuit. It has happened before, you might remember, with the then Chief Judge of the Ninth Circuit in the last decade or so. That's the only instance I can remember. Of course, then the Chief Judge decided to ask the Chief Justice to not have the Ninth Circuit undertake an investigation. So that's exactly what happened there. I think it was assigned to the Third Circuit. And I assume Chief Justice Roberts will do the same here in this situation. Still, it's an important inquiry. And really, it's not so much about Judge Griffith, who was assuming senior status on the D.C. Circuit, but rather whether the majority leader, McConnell, has somehow crossed an ethics line and suggested that Judge Griffith and others retire early or right away so that President Trump can nominate replacements.
So the Trump nominee, Justin Walker, is a protege of McConnell's, whom the ABA found unqualified for his current seat on a district court in Kentucky, where he's only served about 6 months. Did he jump the line, so to speak? Did he leapfrog other candidates?
Yes, but the Senate has been doing this throughout Trump's administration. With the 51 appellate court nominees confirmed, they have leapfrogged and take precedence over the district court nominees. That's why we have 74 district nominees and have had as many as 150 during the Trump administration, because they focus like a laser on the appeals courts and have now only one vacancy left out of 179 judges. And so we shouldn't be surprised. But the fact of the matter is 20 people have been nominated before Walker for the D.C. Circuit, and he's leapfrogged all of them. But that's the priority that the majority leader can set in running the Senate. And he's done that with a vengeance throughout Trump's administration.
That's University of Richmond law professor Carl Tobias speaking with Bloomberg's June Grasso. Catch more of that interview plus analysis of the latest legal news by subscribing to the Bloomberg Law Podcast or downloading the show at Bloomberg.com/podcasts. And attorneys can find exceptional legal research and business development tools at BloombergLaw.com. S&P futures up 23 points this morning. Dow futures up 199 and NASDAQ futures up 73. And Bloomberg Daybreak continues. This is Bloomberg.
Influential conversation.
This is your onboard supervisor speaking. Welcome aboard this Southern service. As we start our journey today, I'd like to say a massive thank you to the millions of key workers helping to keep us moving. Teachers, firefighters, shopkeepers, the NHS, postal workers, delivery drivers, and of course, my fellow transport colleagues. We're proud to be key workers supporting key workers.
Thank you. Southern, we're with you.
At the Halifax, we're all working together to be there for you.
Your money is safe in your account. However, people are using the coronavirus outbreak as an opportunity to try out new scams.
Rest assured that we will never call, text or email you asking you to move money to another account.
Neither will we ask you to share your login details.
For more information and for tips on how you can protect yourself against fraudsters, visit halifax.co.uk/security.
So however you need us, at the Halifax,
we're here to help.
How do you keep track of all your favorite stations and podcasts? Easy. You add them to your favorites list. Just find the audio you want to bookmark and tap the heart icon. Then, whenever you want to browse your favorites, you'll find everything under the Favorites tab.
Keep up with everything happening in the wild world of pro wrestling with a podcast on TuneIn. For expert analysis straight from the WWE to Steve Austin's no-holds-barred conversations with wrestling's biggest personalities, search sports and scroll down to the world of wrestling to listen. Hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio.
Live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studios, this is Bloomberg Daybreak for Wednesday, May 6, 2020. Coming up this hour.
U.S. futures gain as President Trump ramps up the push to reopen the economy.
Disney shares fall as COVID-19 proves costly for the world's biggest entertainment company.
Up next, we get the first of three grim reports on the employment picture in America.
The latest on New York and New Jersey's efforts to reopen. Plus, the ousted vaccine chief files a whistleblower's complaint against the Trump administration. I'm Michael Barr. More ahead.
I'm John Stashower. In sports, the Jets have signed veteran running back Frank Gore, but they are likely not to have injured wideout Quincy Enunwa next season.
That's all straight ahead on Bloomberg Daybreak. On Bloomberg 1130 New York, Bloomberg 99.1 Washington, D.C., Bloomberg 106.1 Boston, Bloomberg 960 San Francisco, Sirius XM 119, and around the world on BloombergRadio.com and via the Bloomberg Business app.
Good morning, I'm Nathan Hager.
And I'm Karen Moscow. U.S. futures are gaining to start the day. We're coming up to 6:01 on Wall Street, and we check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. S&P futures up 25 points, Dow futures up 216, and NASDAQ futures up 78. The DAX in Germany is up 0.3%, CAC in Paris down 0.1%, and the FTSE 100 is up 0.6%. 10-year Treasury down 4/32, yield 0.67%, yield on the 2-year 0.19%. NYMEX crude oil up 3.5%, up 86 cents at $25.41 a barrel. COMEX gold is down 0.2% or $3.30 at $17.0680 an ounce. The euro 1.0786 against the dollar. The yen 106.31. Nathan.
Karen, President Trump is ramping up his push to reopen the economy.
We can't keep our country closed. We have to open our country.
Speaking in Phoenix during his first trip outside of Washington in a month, the president encouraged Americans to think of themselves as, quote, warriors as they consider leaving their homes. He also acknowledged those frustrated by stay-at-home orders that remain in place.
People aren't going to accept it. They won't accept it, and they shouldn't accept it. We have a great country. We can't keep it closed. I mean, I've had doctors say, well, why don't we close it for a couple of years? This is the United States of America.
The president says people should return to normal life, even if it leads to more sickness and death.
And as the push to reopen gathers steam, projections for fatalities are on the rise. Bloomberg's John Tucker joins us live with the latest. Good morning, John.
And good morning, Karen. The University of Washington is increasing its estimates for U.S. deaths to more than 130,000. That's more than double earlier projections, around 60,000. Research from the school is often cited by the White House Coronavirus Task Force. Still, the rate of daily infections continues to slow across the U.S. The latest data show cases up just 1.9% from the prior day. Meantime, the White House is considering disbanding the Coronavirus Task Force as soon as Memorial Day. It plans to transfer responsibility for the government response to FEMA. In New York, I'm John Tucker, Bloomberg Daybreak.
All right, John, thank you. South Korea was one of the first countries to confront the pandemic. Now it's easing social distancing measures as the virus shows signs of subsiding, instead pushing for what the government calls everyday distancing. Here with more is Bloomberg's Rishad Salamat reporting from Hong Kong.
It basically means keep a casual distance while going about your daily activities, but not as intensely as perhaps previously guided. Many companies are turning to those guidelines and using it as a cue to switch over from working from home to returning to the office. In another sign, actually, that the country is normalizing, South Korea's professional baseball league began play. There were no fans. They were cheerleaders. They were all wearing masks, and they were dancing to something like 25,000 empty seats in Seoul's Jamsil Stadium.
South Korea reported just 2 new cases of COVID-19 today. Both were detected during screenings at airports with no local transmissions in cities or towns.
Back here in the U.S., the coronavirus fallout for the world's biggest entertainment company is proving costly. The crisis cost Walt Disney as much as $1.4 billion last quarter, with nearly every part of its business taking a hit. Closed theme parks accounted for $1 billion in lost profit. While most remain shut, Disney is opening its parks in Shanghai on Monday. Eric Hagstrom is an analyst at eMarketer.
Disney's willing to open up these parks early in order to preserve revenue. But Shanghai Disneyland is a relatively small part of their overall parks business, and their parks business in the U.S. still remains closed and likely will remain closed, or at least seeing significantly reduced revenue for the foreseeable future.
Overall earnings at Disney plunged by more than half in the first quarter, and analysts predict the company will lose hundreds of millions more in the current period. Shares are down 1.8% in early trading.
And we have more earnings rolling in from European banks. In Italy, UniCredit reported a $2.9 billion loss tied to COVID-19 provisions, plus write-downs from its business in Turkey. Still, the bank's main business remained resilient, with income from fees and lending beating estimates. UniCredit shares are up more than 0.5% in Milan.
And France Crédit Agricole is setting aside nearly $700 million to cover loans impacted by the pandemic. That's 3 times as much as it booked a year ago. Earnings from the bank were mixed, beating on the top line while posting a drop in net income. Crédit Agricole shares are up 2% in Paris.
Up next, we get results from about 3 dozen companies in the S&P 500, including General Motors. Here with more is Bloomberg's Larry Kofsky.
Like all automakers, GM ended the first quarter at a virtual standstill. Now Bloomberg Intelligence reports it faces the difficult task of restarting operations against the backdrop of an uneven economic reopening. U.S. sales fell 7% in the first quarter, while deliveries in China plunged by 43%. Analysts surveyed by Bloomberg are forecasting a profit of about 30 cents a share on revenue of $31.7 billion. Larry Kofsky, Bloomberg Daybreak.
All right, Larry, thank you. Economic data is also in focus today with the release of ADP's monthly payroll report. It's expected to be a historic reading. Economists predict private companies shed 21 million jobs in April. We get more from Bloomberg's Vinny Giudice.
Jobless claims have been pouring in by the millions each week, implying staggering losses in today's ADP data. Bloomberg Economics says the figures will zero in on the pandemic's impact by company size, noting safety measures have been especially hard on small firms. For many, working from home isn't an option. In March, the ADP report registered the first decline since 2017. Vinny Giudice, Bloomberg Daybreak.
All right, Vinny, thank you. Right now, S&P futures are up 27 points. Dow futures up 228. NASDAQ futures up 83. The 10-year Treasury down 5/32, CEO 0.67%, and the yield on the 2-year 0.19%. And NYMEX crude oil up 3.5%, up 85 cents. It's at $25.42 a barrel. Straight ahead, we have the latest world and national news, and this is Bloomberg.
Thanks, Karen. It's 6:07 on Wall Street, and Michael Barr has more on what's going on around the world. Good morning, Michael.
Good morning, Nathan. New York Governor Andrew Cuomo says his state has a detailed plan to reopen region by region. The plan, which would likely allow counties in upstate New York to open first, requires local officials to track daily metrics of COVID-19. To reopen, Cuomo said regions must see a 2-week decline in hospitalizations and deaths. Right now, New York State remains on pause through May 15th. The 230 new daily deaths in the state were up slightly from the previous day, but far lower than the daily peak of 799 on April 8th. Cuomo argues that the human toll to reopen outweighs the economic cost.
The faster we reopen, the lower the economic cost, but the higher the human cost, because the more lives lost. That, my friends, is the decision we are really making.
New York's hospitalization rates continue to drop with 659 new admissions. That is the lowest number since March. New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio is firing back at President Trump. The president said to the New York Post that he didn't want to give COVID-19 bailouts to states run by Democrats, calling them poorly run and cash-strapped.
I'll give him another chance to show that there's a beating heart there. But these comments today show me something very cold and very, very unfair towards the people he grew up around.
Governors representing both political parties have been asking the federal government for more state funds. New Jersey Governor Phil Murphy says residents there need to keep adhering to the stay-at-home mandate.
Non-essential retail, I hear morning, noon, and night. I appreciate all that. I appreciate all the inputs and the wisdom on beaches. We still have people getting sick, going to the hospital, and sadly, over 300 today, we're reporting in a minute, have died.
A federal judge ruled the New York Democratic presidential primary must be held June 23rd after all. Democrats on the State Board of Elections voted to scrap it because of coronavirus and because Joe Biden was unopposed. A senior government scientist alleges the Trump administration failed to prepare for the onslaught of the coronavirus, then sought a fix by rushing an unproven drug to patients. Rick Bright filed a whistleblower complaint. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. Powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg. Nathan.
Thank you, Michael. 6:09 on Wall Street, in time for the Bloomberg Sports Update. Good morning, John Stashower.
Good morning, Nathan. Frank Gore will turn 37 next week. He's been an NFL running back for 15 years, and in every season, he's rushed for at least 500 yards. That's a record. He's the third leading rusher in NFL history, topped by only Emmitt Smith and Walter Payton. And Gore is now a Jet, signed a 1-year contract to back up Le'Veon Bell. Gore was with the 49ers when Jets coach Adam Gase was the low-level assistant, and he was with the Dolphins in 2018 when Gase was the head coach. As for Jets wide receiver Quincy Enunwa, you have to wonder if his career is over at age 27. Had a great 2018 season, cashed in with a $33 million extension, but Enunwa missed all of 2017 and all but one game last season with a neck injury, and it's already been determined he won't play at all in 2020. For those really starved to see baseball, ESPN in the middle of the night anyway, showing the Korean Baseball League opening day did not have fans, although there were cutout pictures of people's faces taped to the seats. The umpires wore masks inside their normal masks. No high fives allowed, no spitting. That's a big deal in baseball. South Korea was ready to play ball. There were only 3 new cases of coronavirus yesterday in the entire country. Here, who knows? Despite a lot of rumors of MLB's plans to return, Tony Clark, the head of the Players Association, says he has yet to ever receive a formal proposal. Rafael Nadal tells a newspaper in his native Spain that he's in favor of not playing any tennis again until 2021. U.S. Open as of now still on for late August. The French Open was moved to September. John Storchauer, Bloomberg Sports. Nathan.
And John, the Houston Astros sign-stealing controversy isn't going away. The team is now facing a class action lawsuit from 3 groups that accuse the team of selling tickets under false pretenses. The plaintiffs say if they'd known about the scheme, its cover-up, and subsequent baseball investigation, they never would have purchased tickets, goods, or services from the Astros. The suit also claims the club isn't refunding season ticket payments in the face of the coronavirus shutdown. Futures moving higher. This is Bloomberg.
Hey, y'all, Jeff Foxworthy here. Now, if you've ever found yourself repeating the same thing over and over for 75 years, you might be Smokey Bear.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
That's why I'm filling in for Smokey to switch things up, because there's a lot more to say. And I should know because my grandfather was a firefighter. And one of the things he taught me is that the people that love the outdoors the most are often the ones accidentally starting wildfires, which means always BYOB. No, bring your own bucket to the campfire. And be extra careful with things like burning yard trimmings. Don't just walk away, or chances are you might be starting a wildfire. So for the love of the outdoors, go to SmokeyBear.com to learn more about wildfire prevention. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service, your state forester, and the Ad Council.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology, makes innovation happen. NJIT faculty mentored Christoph Camacho when he was a student, helping him co-found a startup and patent a device that uses drone technology for reforestation and to collect valuable data for land management.
I founded Paratrees back in 2016, taking what I learned from my research at NJIT and migrating it to a startup. Our technology is to really enhance land management operations, so we work very closely with land management companies. So we have a drone that performs precision reforestation, and we do storm damage assessment, having access to drones that can collect data so it's much faster. And what is more important, we help them drive management decisions. NJIT has been there every step of the way, going full force with my company.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Learn more at njit.edu.
Asset managers who seize change to launch new...
This is a message from the government about the emergency measures to support the economy during the period of disruption caused by the coronavirus. To help you, your business, and your workers affected, you can apply for cash grants, business rate holidays, statutory sick pay relief packages, as well as the coronavirus job retention and self-employment income support schemes. For information, go to gov.uk/business-support now.
A half-price dream holiday, wouldn't want to miss that. A takeaway for free, wouldn't want to miss that. And 30 gigs data for just £10 a month on Smarty Mobile. You definitely don't want to miss that. Our Smarty SIM comes packed with 30 gigs of data and unlimited calls and texts for just £10 a month on a 1-month plan. That's why Smarty won Best Value SIM-only network in the Uswitch Mobile Awards 2020. Don't miss out. Search Smarty Mobile. Smarty. Simple, honest mobile. Smarty.co.uk.
Picture in your mind a stylish Audi with striking LED headlights, sporty alloy wheels, and some of our most advanced features, including a 10-inch digital cockpit and smart assistant systems like lane departure warning. Picture what that Audi looks like. Now think smaller. The Audi A1. It's not a small car, it's a small Audi. Visit audi.co.uk. Audi. Vorsprung durch Technik.
Get your cook on with Asda. Pick up a 7-pack of Growers Selection bananas for just £1 and 125 grams of Growers Selection blueberries. Was £1.19, now just £1. So you can get groovy with your smoothies. We've got loads more low prices across the store. Asda. Selected stores subject to availability.
Television. Here's Tom McKenzie.
Joining us, former Hong Kong Exchange chairman and one-time Carrie Lam campaign manager, of course, Ron Arcula. This re-escalation of tensions between Beijing and Washington over the origins of the virus. Are you concerned that if we get to a situation where the Trump administration is looking at reimposing tariffs, that Hong Kong is again hit by that as another potential headwind for the city?
Obviously, trade wars doesn't do any good, and there are really no winners. But it is election year in the U.S. And during election year, sometimes strange things and unexpected things happen. But I hope that common sense will prevail, and that if Mr. Trump gets reelected, there could be new dialogue on the trade front, as well as on other issues. If a new administration comes in, the issue has been around long enough, and Mr. Biden, the Democratic candidate, knows China and knows Hong Kong well, and knows the U.S. and China relationship importance. So, I'm cautiously optimistic that post-election, there might be a firmer, clearer path for the two countries.
Hear more interviews like this one on Bloomberg Television, streaming live on Bloomberg.com and on the Bloomberg mobile app, or check your local cable listings. Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow, and futures are on the rise this morning with S&P futures up 25 points, Dow futures up 207, NASDAQ futures up 78, the DAX in Germany's up 0.25%, 10-year Treasury down 5/30 seconds, yield 0.67%, yield on the 2-year 0.19%, and NYMEX crude oil up 3.3% or 81 cents at $25.37 a barrel. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Now here's Michael Barr with more on what's going on around the world. Michael.
Karen, President Trump acknowledged that easing lockdown restrictions will result in some people being, in his words, affected badly, but said it is imperative to get the country going again. As the push to reopen gathers steam, projections for fatalities are on the rise. Bloomberg's John Tucker joins us live.
And Michael, the rate of daily infections continues to slow across the U.S. Meantime, the University of Washington, which is often cited by White House officials, is more than doubling its estimate for U.S. deaths to more than 130,000. The White House is also considering disbanding the coronavirus task force as soon as Memorial Day. John Tucker, Bloomberg Daybreak.
Thank you, John. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg. Nathan.
All right, Michael, thank you. It's just before 6:19 on Wall Street, live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers studios. This is Bloomberg Daybreak. And as President Trump ramps up the push to reopen the economy, how to do so safely, as we do have projections showing a rising death toll. Andy Pekos is back with us this morning, professor of molecular microbiology and immunology at the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health. Always good to get your insights from a health perspective. Dr. Pekos, thanks for being with us this morning. What is your view on the president's push to reopen and how to do so safely?
Well, as I've said a lot of times, this is really going to be focused on local areas. So whether it be states or counties, they all have to come up with their own specific plans to reopen the economy. Everybody wants to reopen the economy. Everyone wants to relieve some of these restrictions. There's a way to do it that can minimize the number of cases that are going to happen as we loosen these restrictions. And that's the critical thing. And that's where local planning, state planning is really going to be critical.
Are you seeing the right kind of state and local planning at this point? Are you worried about certain hotspots?
Yeah, again, this epidemic is very different in different parts of the country. Some places are peaking, some places are on their way down. It seems like all the public health interventions are working. But what we want to make sure is that we don't take our foot off the gas too early, because then we'll settle into a place where we're seeing a larger number of cases than we want to see. We want to make sure that cases are going down and that we stabilize them at a low rate. So that's where the going to be very critical.
Are you concerned that people are going to let up on the social distancing guidelines now that the recommendations from the White House have been allowed to expire?
Yeah, it's a great point. I think there's a big difference between opening up businesses, maybe opening up parks and beaches, versus not following good social distancing, good hand hygiene, and wearing of these face covers that everybody's been doing. Those last few things are things that we're going to have to be getting used to for a long period of time, even if we can go and visit our local stores and maybe get takeout from some restaurants that we used to frequent before the COVID-19 pandemic.
And I got to think that testing, perhaps even at the business level, is going to be important, isn't it? Are you seeing signs that businesses are going to be able to do the kind of testing that's necessary to make sure that the pandemic is being mitigated well enough?
Yeah, I think, and we here at Hopkins are coming up with our plans to reopen some of our research capabilities here. I think testing is an integral part of reopening and monitoring for cases to keep those second waves, third waves, those resurgences people keep talking about down to a minimum. We should have the testing capability to be able to go back to test, isolate, and contact trace during this recovery period. And that's the critical thing that most states have to be aware of in terms of knowing their capacity for that.
Does a positive test always mean that you're infectious if you do come out positive for COVID-19?
Yeah, no, it's a really interesting area right now. It turns out that it looks like there are a lot of people that are still positive by the virus test, so that test for the viral genome in your nasal samples. But that virus oftentimes isn't infectious, meaning it can't transmit. So people are really studying now to try to get a better understanding of what that window of time is that someone is transmissible, so they can really focus their efforts on quarantining people just during that really critical time.
I just saw a report come down this morning that, that researchers have found genetic mutations since this novel coronavirus was first discovered. Is that typical for coronaviruses, and how does that affect the push for treatments?
Yeah, so right now the coronavirus is mutating at a rate that we would expect. These are viruses called RNA viruses. RNA viruses mutate at very high rates. So the rates of mutation seem to be consistent with what we would expect with this class of viruses. The real critical thing is there evidence that any of these mutations have changed the way the virus is either transmitting or causing disease? Nothing right now is glaringly obvious from the epidemiology, but many research laboratories like my own are trying to isolate some of these viruses and do those experiments to actually experimentally determine if these mutations are changing the virus in any way.
I'm curious to get your view on the White House potentially disbanding its coronavirus task force. Is that the right move at this point? Do you feel like the coronavirus task force has done its job?
Well, the federal government has important roles in terms of organizing resources and providing general guidance across the country. I would hope that those things are now going to be passed on to other agencies and other entities so we can maintain that during this sort of recovery phase that we're going to be entering into. I think some of the people on that committee are fantastic, and I think that we want to have them continue to be engaged to help set up a national policy and do those national objectives.
And just quickly, just a few seconds left. Are you thinking that we are in the recovery phase here? Or are you still concerned about second or third waves?
I'm still very concerned about second or third waves because lifting of these restrictions has got to be gradual, and we've got to make sure we monitor for upswings in cases. And we're also looking to the Southern Hemisphere. The Southern Hemisphere is entering a fall-winter period, so it'll be really curious to see how the virus behaves down there.
Thank you for this, Dr. Penkosh. Always appreciated. Dr. Andy Penkosh is a professor of molecular microbiology and immunology at the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health. Find more on the coronavirus outbreak at bloomberg.com/coronavirus or VSGO on the Bloomberg terminal. You're listening to Bloomberg Daybreak.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute.
Airbnb is laying off 25% of its workforce as it confronts a steep decline in global travel. In a letter to employees, CEO Brian Chesky said the company is letting 1,900 of its 7,500 workers go and cutting businesses that don't directly support home sharing. Departing employees will receive at least 14 weeks of base pay and will get health care coverage for a year in the U.S. Delta Airlines is taking social distancing beyond keeping some middle seats off limits, saying it will cap sales at 50% in first class and at 60% in economy. Delta will block select window and aisle seats in the coming weeks. Stock futures point to a higher open this morning as President Donald Trump again renews his push to reopen the U.S. economy. Wall Street ended higher yesterday for a second straight day. The S&P 500 up almost 1%. Gina Cervetti, Bloomberg Radio.
Business is constantly evolving. Is your financial printer evolving to keep ahead of the curve? At Command Financial, we are redefining financial printing by providing industry-leading expertise, leveraging technology, and honing processes and best practices. Every day, Command helps SEC registrants, as well as members of their working groups, including securities attorneys and investment bankers, prepare, file, and disseminate regulatory and disclosure documents, such as registration statements, M&A documents, and mutual fund prospectuses and reports. Command provides a full range of services to help you effectively complete your deal, meet your disclosure requirements, and achieve your shareholder communications objectives. Visit our website at commandfinancial.com and learn how we're evolving, not only with the times, but also with your business requirements. Command Financial, redefining financial printing.
Imagine.
Switch on Acorn TV, the brand new streaming service featuring world-class TV from Britain and beyond. Watch exclusive premieres like the colourful crime drama Queens of Mystery.
Once you have eliminated the impossible, whatever remains, however improbable, must be the truth.
And fan favourites like Inspector George Gently.
I'm just an old copper doing his job.
If you love drama with a little mystery thrown in, enjoy 30 days free with code ACORN30. Then just $4.99 a month. No adverts, no contract, cancel anytime. Join online today at acorn.tv.
This is a message from the government about the emergency measures to support the economy during the period of disruption caused by the coronavirus. To help you, your business, and your workers affected, you can apply for cash grants, business rate holidays, statutory sick pay relief packages, as well as the coronavirus job retention and self-employment income support schemes. For information, go to gov.uk/business-support now.
The trampoline that makes Dad feel like a kid again. The projector that turns film night into outdoor cinema night. The hot tub that transforms your garden into a spa retreat. With a choice of ways to pay, you can make the most of family time. You can say yes when it matters most at very.co.uk. Goods and services provided by Shop Direct Home Shopping Limited. Credit provided. Subject to status by Shop Direct Finance Company Limited. 18+. Picture in your mind a stylish Audi with striking LED headlights, sporty alloy wheels, and some of our most advanced features, including a 10-inch digital cockpit and smart assistant systems like lane departure warning. Picture what that Audi looks like. Now think smaller. The Audi A1. It's not a small car, it's a small Audi. Visit audi.co.uk. Audi. Vorsprung durch Technik.
Get your cook on with Asda. With Budget Selection Quarter Pounder Beef Burgers, get a 4-pack for just £2.28. And salmon fillets, get a 2-pack for only £2.97. So dinner's always a winner. At Asda, we're committed to low prices every day on the quality products you need. Asda. Selected stores online, subject to availability.
TSB believe in people helping people. So if for whatever reason you become an innocent victim of fraud, they will refund every penny you lost from your TSB account. Find out more about their fraud refund guarantee at tsb.co.uk. Terms and conditions apply.
From the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio in New York, Bloomberg 1130. To Washington, D.C., Bloomberg 99.1. To Boston, Bloomberg 106.1. To San Francisco, Bloomberg 960. To the country, Sirius XM Channel 119. And around the globe, the Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Daybreak.
And it's 6:30 on Wall Street. Good morning. I'm Nathan Hager.
And I'm Karen Moscow. We're just about 3 hours away from the opening of U.S. trading. Let's get you up to date on the news you need to know at this hour. U.S. futures are gaining as the White House ramps up the push to get America back to work. President Trump is removing notes of caution from his rhetoric as he fixes course to reopen the economy.
We have a great country. We can't keep it closed. I mean, I've had doctors say, well, why don't we close it for a couple of years? This is the United States of America.
Speaking in Phoenix during his first trip outside of Washington in a month, the president encouraged Americans to return to normal life, though he acknowledged the effort could lead to more sickness and death.
Will some people be affected? Yes. Will some people be affected badly? Yes. But we have to get our country open, and we have to get it open soon.
President Trump says he's pivoting to phase 2 of the nation's response to the pandemic, a step that will include disbanding the White House Coronavirus Task Force as soon as Memorial Day.
As the push to reopen gathers steam, projections for fatalities are on the rise. Bloomberg's John Tucker joins us live with the latest. Good morning, John.
And Karen, the University of Washington is increasing its estimate for U.S. deaths to more than 130,000. That's more than double earlier projections, around 60,000. Research from the school is often cited by the White House Coronavirus Task Force. Still, the rate of daily infections continues to slow across the United States. The latest data show cases just up 1.9% from the prior day. In New York, I'm John Tucker, Bloomberg Daybreak.
Thank you, John. The COVID-19 fallout for the world's biggest entertainment company is proving costly. The crisis cost Walt Disney as much as $1.4 billion last quarter, with nearly every part of its business taking a hit. Here with more is Bloomberg's Charlie Pellet.
The force was not with the world's largest entertainment company. It was bludgeoned on all sides by the coronavirus. At 60 cents a share, earnings trailed the 86-cent average of analyst estimates. The worst performance by far came from the theme park division. Operating income there tumbled to $639 million from $1.5 billion last year. Charlie Pellet, Bloomberg Daybreak.
All right, Charlie, thank you. And shares of Disney are down about 1.5% in early trading. We're watching some other earnings crossing the Bloomberg right now. We're hearing from CVS. First quarter profit beating analyst estimates, and its full year guidance remains unchanged. Futures this morning are higher, with S&P futures up 24 points, Dow futures up 206, NASDAQ futures up 70, 10-year Treasury down 5/32, the yield 0.67%, yield on the 2-year 0.19%. And the euro is at 1.0797 against the dollar. And straight ahead, we have the latest world and national news. And this is Bloomberg.
Thank you, Karen. 6:33 on Wall Street. Michael Barr has more on what's going on around the world. Michael?
Thank you very much, Nathan. New York Governor Andrew Cuomo says the national debate over when to reopen outbreak-ravaged economies boils down to the value placed on people's lives. Cuomo made the argument as political pressure intensifies to relax restrictions, keeping people at home and off the job.
They went to great lengths initially to minimize it. It then became undeniable. They dealt with it and then left it to the states, but they won it over. That is clear. But the virus doesn't care. The virus doesn't listen. This is not a marketing situation. You can't talk your way around this.
Cuomo has opted for a slower approach that will allow parts of the state to phase in economic activity later this month if they meet and maintain benchmarks. New Jersey Governor Phil Murphy says residents there need to keep adhering to the stay-at-home mandates.
If you're one of the folks out there, as I am, by the way, itching to get things back open again, 385 people entered the hospital yesterday in New Jersey with COVID-19.
The stay-at-home restrictions are in effect in New Jersey until further notice. California Governor Gavin Newsom has laid out a bit more detail on the slow partial reopening on Friday. Bloomberg's Ed Baxter has the story.
Newsom says he has to balance getting back to business and the real threat to health.
We're not going back to normal. It's back to a new normal with adaptations and modifications until we get to immunity, until we get to a vaccine. We'll get there. That's coming. That will happen. The question is, what happens in between.
He says this will look more like widespread curbside pickup for most businesses in the beginning. In San Francisco, I'm Ed Baxter, Bloomberg Daybreak.
The ousted vaccine chief fired from his job during the coronavirus pandemic says his early warnings about the outbreak were ignored. Rick Bright alleges the Trump administration failed to prepare for the onslaught of the coronavirus, then sought a fix by rushing an unproven drug to patients. Bright filed a whistleblower complaint. The Supreme Court says Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg has been hospitalized with an infection caused by a gallstone. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg. Nathan.
All right, Michael, thank you. It is 6:35 on Wall Street and time for the Bloomberg Sports Update. Here's John Stashower.
Nathan, the Jets have added the third leading rusher in NFL history. Frank Gore, who turns 37 next week, has had an NFL record 15 consecutive seasons of at least 500 rushing yards. He'll be the backup to Le'Veon Bell. He has a history with Jets coach Adam Gase, both with the 49ers and a couple of years ago in Miami. Another veteran running back, Marshawn Lynch, says he's in talks about playing again with Seattle. Lynch has already come out of retirement twice, including to rejoin the Seahawks last December. The Giants have added a quarterback. Cooper Rush out of Central Michigan has only thrown one NFL pass. He was just released by Dallas after the Cowboys signed Andy Dalton. Jason Garrett is the Giants' new offensive coordinator. He coached Rush in Dallas. The Giants now have 5 QBs on their roster. Daniel Jones, of course, is the starter. And Eli Manning told SiriusXM Radio he believes Jones will thrive. Now that Eli's no longer on the team, he said Jones now knows he's the man. There'll be no distractions. At the time of the NBA shutdown, the Knicks and Nets both had interim head coaches, so both looking for a coach for next season, and both could have their eyes on the same guy. Tom Thibodeau had success in Chicago, not as much at Minnesota. He used to be a Knicks assistant, and he was represented by the new Knicks team president, Leon Rose, but the Nets might want him too. Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving were both on the Olympic team that had Thibodeau as an assistant. May 6th, this date in sports history, 1954, an event that was a huge deal at the time. In Oxford, England, Roger Bannister became the first ever to run the mile in under 4 minutes. John Stashower, Bloomberg Sports. Nathan?
John, thanks. It is 6:37 on Wall Street.
The following commentary is from Bloomberg Opinion.
Streaming services face an economic reckoning after COVID-19. I'm Tara LaChapelle, a columnist for Bloomberg Opinion. When the media giants emerge from this crisis, a vexing problem awaits them. That is it possible to make money in the business of streaming? Companies like Netflix and Disney spend billions of dollars creating an endless supply of content, then sell access to this deluxe all-you-can-eat buffet for little more than the cost of dinner at McDonald's. And for consumers, it means the most sought-after TV content now lives behind a chaotic jumble of paywalls. But there are ways to make streaming less frustrating for everyone. Step 1, incorporate ads to keep prices low, but do so in new inventive ways rather than traditional commercials. Step 2, reintroduce bundles to alleviate some of the cost and inconvenience of managing multiple subscriptions. And finally, make streaming video apps more of a social community akin to Instagram and TikTok to provide the human connection we've all come to appreciate more during this pandemic. I'm Tara LaChapelle. For more Bloomberg Opinion, please go to Bloomberg.com/opinion or OPIN Go on the Bloomberg terminal.
This has been Bloomberg Opinion.
You can hear Bloomberg Opinion commentaries every weekday at this time. Terminal customers can read more at OPIN Go. 6:38 on Wall Street. Time for the Bloomberg Green Report. Here's Bob Moon.
The world's dinner tables are seeing the impact of climate change. As cold regions become warmer and warm places hotter still, farming and fishing are shifting. An evolving climate means big changes for people who grow, catch, and rear for a living, and everyone else who buys and eats what they produce. There are winners and there are losers. There are rich world problems, less cod, for example, versus more lobster, and problems sure to harm the poor, drought and pestilence. There are threats to the quality of the world's basic staples, including wheat and corn, as well as such nation-defining luxuries as Bordeaux wine and Java coffee. And supply shocks can shake up prices. As temperatures rise, the best-growing conditions for many crops are moving away from the tropics and from lower-lying land and cooler climes. Fish and underwater catches, too, are migrating to colder seas as their habitats warm. That's the Bloomberg Green Business Report. I'm Bob Moon.
Thank you, Bob. Now some other stories we're following. Elon Musk has cleared the last hurdle to collect the first chunk of a monster pay award. The Tesla CEO can now unlock stock options valued at just over $700 million. The payout is based on Tesla's market cap, sales, and earnings. If all goes well, Musk could eventually earn more than $50 billion in awards. BMW is joining other automakers in lowering its profit outlook for the year. The company says fallout from the coronavirus is lasting longer than expected. BMW predicts the second quarter will be even worse than the first. And shares of Beyond Meat are up 7 1/3% in early trading. Sales at the company outpaced estimates. Beyond sold more product to supermarkets as the pandemic closed restaurants across the country. Futures pointing to a higher open on this Wednesday morning on Wall Street. S&P futures are up 25 points. Dow futures a gain of 220. NASDAQ futures up 72 points. 10-year down 6/32. Yield 0.68%. Yield on the 2-year Treasury note 0.19%. You're listening to Bloomberg Daybreak.
Have you wanted to speak a new language, but you thought it'd be too hard or take too much time? Then go to Babbel.com, download the app, and try it for free. In just 15 minutes a day, you'll be on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. And right now, you can try Babbel for free. Babbel starts out teaching you words and phrases by matching them with pictures. You won't believe how easy the interactive program is. Soon the sentences get a little bigger, and before you know it, you're having simulated conversations voiced by native speakers. And because Babbel is crafted by language experts and uses the spaced repetition method, in just 10 to 15 minutes a day, you'll be speaking the language of your choice with real confidence. With Babbel, you can speak a language. Just go to Babbel.com and start your first lesson in the language of your choice for free. Download the Babbel app or go to Babbel.com and try it for free. That's Babbel.com.
Debbie Hart is president of BioNJ, which represents the interests of more than 400 New Jersey-based biotech companies. She's also a strong voice in the biotech sector, supporting research universities like New Jersey Institute of Technology. She sees NJIT as a valuable partner in attracting venture capital and biotech startups to the Garden State.
So the number one reason that companies come here to New Jersey for the biotech industry is for our talent. We estimate that there were about 30 biotech companies in the early 90s in New Jersey, about 80 in 1998. Today there are more than 400. And that growth continues, and it's come from every possible angle. Other countries, other states, they've spun out of our academic institutions as well as our biotech and our pharma companies, and we expect that growth to continue long into the future. And NJIT is a pipeline for talent, for companies, for entrepreneurs to do that important work.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Learn more at njit.edu.
This is a Bloomberg.
Where will 2020 take you? Somewhere where people care about each other, about our planet, about creating a better world for everyone, and becoming the best versions of yourselves. Join a community of like-minded individuals at the University of Winchester. Make sure to accept your offer by the UCAS deadline and visit our website to find out more. See the bigger picture. Be the difference. Go to winchester.ac.uk.
While most of us are looking out for each other at this time, sadly, fraudsters are trying to take advantage of the situation. Here's Chris Ainsley from Santander with advice for keeping your money safe.
Please be wary of text messages containing links. They may appear to be from legitimate senders like the government, a bank or a delivery company, but never enter your online banking information or personal details after clicking on a link.
For more advice on keeping your money safe, visit santander.co.uk.
The Mina Kimes Show podcast.
Kevin Clark. If Josh Allen became the 10th best quarterback in football this year, they'd probably win 14 games. Am I wrong about that?
No. If you as a quarterback can't win in the Bills' situation right now, they should not extend you. So many teams, Jets, do not have the information they need to evaluate their quarterbacks based on the teams they've built around. The Bills do.
Listen and subscribe to the Mina Kimes Show podcast.
Search the Mina Kimes Show to listen.
With the NHL season temporarily on ice, now is a good time to catch up on past games.
This shot scored, Malkin again! Bergeron, he scores!
With game replay on TuneIn, you can listen to every power play, slap shot, and goal of the 2019-2020 season so far.
Suter to Cunnin to Fiala, he scores!
And For a limited time, it's free for hockey fans everywhere. Search Classic Game Replays to start listening.
How do you keep track of all your favorite stations and podcasts? Easy. You add them to your favorites list. Just find the audio you want to bookmark and tap the heart icon. Then, whenever you want to browse your favorites, you'll find everything under the Favorites tab.
Want to relive the glory of college football?
Balls over a man, into the end zone.
Come explore TuneIn's Classic Game Replay collection to hear ESPN's complete coverage of the 2019 New Year's 6 bowl games. Don't miss your chance to re-experience the Rose Bowl, the 2020 National Championship, featuring Clemson and LSU.
There's going to be 2 champions on the field tomorrow night. There's going to be 1 team hold up the trophy.
10, rise to the 5, touchdown!
Search Classic Game Replays to listen for free.
News and financial information 24 hours a day. Powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. This is Bloomberg Radio. Now, a global news update.
Special report, coronavirus update. Leaders in New York took aim at President Trump again for characterizing requests for aid as bailouts.
Some comments President Trump made during an interview with the New York Post didn't land well with New York's governor and the mayor.
President of the United States, a former New Yorker, who seems to enjoy stabbing his hometown in the back, talking about no bailout for New York.
New York's governor said the partisan language is mischaracterizing the situation.
If you starve the states, how do you expect the states to be able to fund this entire reopening plan?
Cuomo said the need for funding in New York should not be taken lightly. Steve Kastenbaum, New York.
Britain's official coronavirus death toll surpassed that of Italy to become the highest in Europe and second highest in the world behind the United States. Over 29,000 killed by the virus in the UK. I'm John Trout.
Why all the top-tier experts? Because business is not a magic trick.
Give us a sense of the economic backdrop.
Bloomberg Markets.
Which financial records are these?
Weekday mornings at 10 Eastern. On Bloomberg Radio. Bloomberg, the world is listening. Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow. CVS beating analyst estimates boosted by shoppers stockpiling medicines. It left its full-year guidance in place. U.S. stock index futures, meanwhile, are rising after President Trump pushed again to reopen the economy. Stocks in Europe, they turned higher, even amid more dismal economic data and some mixed corporate earnings. We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. S&P futures up about 26 points. Dow futures up 218. NASDAQ futures up 73. The DAX in Germany's up 0.25%. 10-year Treasury down 6/32, yield 0.68%. The yield on the 2-year 0.19%. NYMEX crude oil up 3.8% or 94 cents at $25.50 a barrel. COMEX gold is down about 0.2% or $2.70 at $17.0770 an ounce. The euro at 1.0802 against the dollar. British pound 1.2386 and the yen 106.31. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Now here's Michael Barr with more on what's going on around the world. Michael.
Karen, President Donald Trump says Americans should begin returning to their everyday lives, even if it leads to more sickness and death from the pandemic. President Trump, speaking in Phoenix during his first trip outside Washington in more than a month, said he's preparing for phase 2 of the U.S. response to the coronavirus. That will include disbanding the White House task force of public health experts. Vice President Mike Pence will travel to Iowa on Friday as the state combats coronavirus outbreaks in meatpacking plants that threaten the U.S. food supply. Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg underwent non-surgical treatment for a benign gallbladder condition. According to the U.S. Supreme Court, Ginsburg will be in the hospital for a day or two. Ginsburg, who is 87, is a 4-time cancer survivor. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg. Nathan.
All right, Michael, thank you. We are live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studios, where it is 6:49 on Wall Street. Time now to check what's going on in D.C., where some of the top stories do include Supreme Court Justice Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg's hospitalization. Also, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi looking to take the lead on crafting the next round of coronavirus stimulus. And China's ambassador to the U.S. calling for an end to the blame game over the origins of COVID-19. Also making news this morning, the president saying we have to reopen the country, even if it means more people get sick or die from the novel coronavirus. Joining us now with more, Greg Vallier, Chief U.S. Policy Strategist at AGF Investments. Last few times we've talked, Greg, you said the president seemed to be listening to his health experts when it comes to the response to the pandemic. Now he seems all in on focusing on the economy. Is this the right time to make that shift, do you think?
No, it's not, and I don't think he's listening to the doctors right now. I mean, let's be honest, this virus is maybe half over. You take New York City or New York State out of the calculation, cases are rising around the country, deaths and new infections. You look at rural America, cases are dramatically higher, so we're going to declare victory and stop the task force. I mean, we've got a long way to go. The idea that we have beaten this virus is ridiculous.
Well, why do you think, then, the president is making this shift at this point?
Well, it's an election year, and you know, to be fair, I mean, he says, I want to be a cheerleader for the U.S. I think that's reasonable. Of course, he wants to see things get better for the country, and he wants morale to improve. But I just think we're not there yet. I would imagine, Nathan, by at some point in July, we'll be at 100,000 fatalities. That seems very likely, and I think we've got a ways to go.
I mean, that sounds like the projection that the president himself is making here. So what is the risk that you say?
Well, I think the risk is complacency. I think a lot of governors have seen protests and decided, you know, maybe we haven't met the Dr. Fauci standards, but they're opening up parts of their states. Over the weekend was down near the mall in Washington, near the Lincoln Memorial. I was on a run, didn't get near anybody, but I looked at the mall. There were thousands of people in the mall jammed together. So I think that the risk is that we get complacent.
What do you see coming in terms of the stimulus debate that is happening in Washington now, or is about to happen, where you're seeing Nancy Pelosi, the House Speaker, really trying to take the lead this time?
Well, that's another one. Sorry to be so negative this morning, but that's another story that I think is not encouraging. It's a mess. They're dysfunctional. McConnell wants liability protection in the bill. Pelosi wants up to $2 trillion for state and local governments, but she's not going to get that for pension funds in states that haven't been run well. You've got several other issues. The president wants to have a big cut in the payroll tax, and even Republicans don't want that. So I think this is going to be a long slog. I think it's going to take weeks, if not months, before any kind of legislation comes into focus.
And how does that match up with the possibility that we could see a rising count of infection while this debate is going on? How do you see this playing out?
Well, I think Congress is going to have to get pressured to do more. Maybe Friday's unemployment number will be a wake-up call to everybody, but I think that Congress is going slow. Mitch McConnell doesn't want to move too quickly, and I think because of that, we won't get aid to state and local governments or any more small business aid until late summer, if then.
Now, you got to think in some ways that the rising rhetoric, the rising tensions between the U.S. and China can't be helping matters right now.
That's a big deal, and I point out to people, this is not just a Donald Trump crusade. Both parties, both Democrats and Republicans, I think, are angry at the Chinese for their lack of transparency. There's anger in Western Europe, Australia. I think a lot of countries feel the Chinese have not been forthcoming, and I think it's going to lead to some legislation, maybe finding a way to curb supply lines, to curb our reliance on Chinese medicines, Chinese pharmaceuticals. We're in a deep freeze with the Chinese, and I think it's going to last for a while.
Is that something that can find bipartisan support, that kind of pressure legislatively on China?
Absolutely. I think it's not just Trump. It's Chuck Schumer. It's Elizabeth Warren. A lot of Democrats feel the Chinese need to be taught a lesson. I think that the antipathy toward China is one of the few stories in Washington where you do have bipartisanship.
All right. Well, we'll try to find some more positive things to talk about, hopefully, next time around. Greg Vallier, Chief U.S. Policy Strategist, AGF Investments. Karen.
All right, thanks, Nathan. It is 6:54 on Wall Street. Time for the Bloomberg Small Business Report with John Tucker. John, good morning.
Karen, good morning. Today we are speaking with Ashwin Deshmukh. He owns a small cocktail bar in the Bowery neighborhood of Manhattan. The establishment was preparing to celebrate its one-year anniversary right when the lockdown went into effect. Ashwin, good morning. Can you tell us what happened?
We had a really great pipeline and some really amazing things happening going into March, and it all went to zero in about 24 and 48 hours. You know, some people were more aggressive with cancellations than others, and it's really a terrible timing because we just got to that 1 year mark where you can kind of settle in and take it a little easier, and you don't have to be so aggressive on the road gen every single night or every single weekend. And, you know, this happened. So we're going to be starting back at zero again, essentially, when we reopen.
Even when you do reopen, how do you think your small business will be changed?
I really think it matters whether or not we know more about the virus at that point. And I think consumers are just kind of starting to see the implications of reopening, and I think a lot of things just haven't played out yet. You know, if that happens and there's a big spike again, then people go back inside, or HVAC and air patterns and air and heat and cooling patterns might be just impossible for small bars and restaurants like ours to survive if people think that they're likely to catch it from, you know, being inside and being close to each other. And then if there are limitations on how far people can sit or where they can stand at a bar, that's kind of like a death sentence for us because it's a small space and there's really, you know, capacity for 75, 85 people. If you make that half, including staff, all of a sudden you're looking at 20, 30 people, and your $2,000 to $2,500 an hour of peak revenue goes down to $400, $500 an hour, and it's just a lot of questions on where the consumer mindset is at the end of all of this and really how fun it is to go out anymore. And if those two things don't really come back to where they were, you're kind of looking at like a best scenario, 30, 40% of revenue. And that's if you like change your offering, do like tasting menus and pre-booking, but the kind of fun environment where you open your doors and you're on a popular street in New York City and people flood in is kind of over. And that looks like it's over for maybe a year. That would be my guess.
All right, Ashwin, thank you. Ashwin Deshmukh, the owner of Short Stories at 355 Bowery in New York City, cocktail bar there. And we hope things work out for the business once things do get started back up again. We'll continue bringing you stories of small businesses struggling in the face of COVID-19 every day at this time right here on Bloomberg Radio. I'm John Tucker, and that is the Bloomberg Small Business Report for today. Karen.
All right, John, thank you. We continue to watch the markets this morning with futures rising. S&P futures up 24 points, Dow futures up 206, and NASDAQ futures up 71. This as CVS reported that it beat analyst estimates in its latest quarter, boosted by shoppers stockpiling medicines, and as it left its full-year guidance in place. NYMEX crude oil also on the rise of 3.7% or 89 cents. It's at $25.45 a barrel. The euro at 1.0805 against the dollar, the British pound 1.2382. And Bloomberg surveillance is straight ahead with Tom Keene, Jonathan Farrow, and Lisa Abramowitz. For Nathan Hager, I'm Karen Moscow, and this is Bloomberg.
Influential conversations from Bloomberg.
What do you do to be an everyday superhero, like Dan?
So my baby boy Ben and me just wanted to share what we do to look after the environment. We put the wet wipes we use in the bin instead of down the loo. Would be pretty nasty if that lot ended up blocking our pipes.
Wet wipes and nappies block thousands of pipes every year. Save our sewers, rivers and seas by putting them in the bin where they belong. Visit thameswater.co.uk/bin it. Together, we can care for the environment.
Blagging your way through the kids' schoolwork, pretending you always knew the capital of Brunei is Bandar Seri Begawan, when really you're frantically scrolling through the internet with your phone under the table, hoping that they just think you're an absolute fountain of knowledge. Whatever you rely on the internet for, rely on TalkTalk to stay connected. TalkTalk for everyone.
With the NHL season temporarily on ice, now is a good time to catch up on past games. With Game Replay on TuneIn, you can hear every matchup of the 2019-2020 season so far. And for a limited time, it's free for hockey fans everywhere. Search Classic Game Replays to start listening.
Get the latest breaking news alerts and listening suggestions for new stations and podcasts. Let TuneIn keep you in the loop with push notifications. Just go to your device's settings and allow push notifications from TuneIn to get live alerts and recommendations on the audio you want to know about.
Segments of Alphabet's business are most likely to come under scrutiny.
Get all the pieces.
They're getting mixed signals from governments.
He's failed to gain traction.
Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business, Radio.com, and iHeartRadio apps, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening. From the financial capital of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio. This is Bloomberg Surveillance Economics.
A lot of us are still in a bit of a guessing game, trying to determine how severe the downturn will be. The only thing that can bring an end to the crisis is containing the disease.
Finance.
We are the one country where people depend on employment for health insurance in the middle of a health crisis.
Investment.
Real yield is a scarce asset these days. It's just unknowable, of course, where things are going.
Bloomberg Surveillance with Tom Keene, Jonathan Farrell, and Lisa Abramowitz on Bloomberg Radio.
From New York City for our audience worldwide, good morning, good morning. This is Bloomberg Surveillance. Coming up on the program, the president pushing to reopen the nation for business. China rejecting allegations and calling to end the blame game as EU officials warn Eurozone survival is being put at risk. From the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studio, hello Wednesday. Here is your Wednesday morning price action. 2 days of gains on the S&P 500. Monday, Tuesday, this Wednesday it could become 3. Futures positive 0.9%, up 26 points. In the bond market, treasuries as follows. Yields are as follows on a US 10-year, up by 2 basis points to 0.68% on a 10-year maturity. Outside of that, in foreign exchange in G10, it is a euro that's weaker. Euro dollar coming down 1/3 of 1%. Sterling down by 1/2 of 1%. From New York City this morning, good morning to you all. Alongside Tom Keene, I'm Jonathan Farrow, together with Lisa Abramowitz. The big issue this morning, undoubtedly, the reopening push picking up speed, Tom.
And no question about that, and that's a whole theme for America and all that. But you mentioned the euro, John, and back to the markets as we go into 3 days of Jobs Day data, those horrific reports we expect Friday. Euro crushed, euro yen out to new yen strength, and even, John, in the last hour and a half, Swissy started to strengthen. I mean, separate from opening America is the idea of beginning to discuss the fragility of Europe is just extraordinary.
Well, this story is part of the pressure to reopen these economies. And Lisa, to hear the European Commission come out this morning and say that the downturn, the fragmentation of Europe is back on the table. It threatens the very future of the Eurozone. Some unbelievable words coming out of the Commission this morning.
Yeah, part of this stems from this push to try to get the entire region to come together with some sort of fiscal plan in a way that the U.S. has, and frankly has shown a lot more unity than Europe. And they're saying, look, this is required for us to survive as a union. But also, I mean, how many economic data points can we get that are record troughs? I mean, the sales numbers coming out of Germany today, just mind-blowing, John.
A single-digit PMI out of India overnight.
I missed that.
Absolutely
wow.
Stunning. Fantastic lineup of guests throughout the morning right here on Bloomberg Surveillance. John Norman of JP Morgan joining us later, together with Howard Davies, the RBS chairman. Look out for those conversations. We begin this morning with the President of the United States saying the following. Will some people be affected? Yes. Will some people be affected badly? Yes. But we have to get our country open, and we have to get it open soon. Let's turn now to David Balin of Citi Private Bank, the Chief Investment Officer. David, help me out with this one as we reopen. Is there a reopening rotation in this market? If so, what does it look like?
Well, in terms of what we're expecting to see is, a reopening that is very much focused on two big trends. One is to refill the supply lines and for all industrial products and capital expenditures, and the second one associated with the consumer. We expect that reopening is right. This quarter is all about refilling that pipeline, and then obviously the rebound will take place in the numbers in Q3. And as you've been talking about on the show today, we're going to continue to see these incredibly bad numbers. And what we're going to need to see on the opposite side of this is an enormous amount of reemployment. of the 30-odd million people, let's say in the United States, who are unemployed, we would want to see half of those people or more reemployed as we enter Q3. And if that's the case, then you're meeting the market expectations here. So to me, that's what we're going to be looking for, because that is what's going to drive, in my mind, the economic power, the recovery that will give people confidence that the numbers in the markets today are real.
How far is the stock market looking out right now? The textbook tells me 6 months. We understand that's a guesstimate. But, David, how far do you think the stock market's guessing out?
Yeah, I think that the stock market, Tom, has to be guessing out now about a year, and here's why. First of all, you see that nobody is willing to make really good predictions about what's actually going to happen quarter to quarter for all good reasons. These numbers are unlike anything that we've ever seen, including in the great financial crisis. So what we need to see is a recovery, right, where we get through this trough and then we actually experience the type of earnings that, for 2021, and we get some clarity on that. And we're expecting a very sharp decline, about 40% decline in EPS for the S&P, and half of that would be captured back in 2021. So once we get into Q3 and we see the recovery, people will need to believe that what they see in Q3 will be made to 2021 possible. And that will be the key determinant as to whether or not this market can maintain the types of valuations that are being projected.
Within the elasticities on any given big company's income statement, what does furlough mean to you? I mean, John, you're up to speed on these headlines better than me. British Airways is furloughing. General Motors, the CFO, is going to be on with Bloomberg later. I'll bet you they'll furlough. What's furlough mean?
Well, in terms of what we're looking at, furlough means obviously temporary unemployment, people where the company's intention is to reemploy them. And furlough also means, at least in the U.S., that those furloughed employees will get benefits associated with either company loans that are forgiven or because of unemployment benefits that are made available. And then when that furlough period is over, they're presumably reemployed and then will ultimately be paid by the company.
David, this sort of goes to the idea of what the economy will look like on the other side, the idea of furloughing employees rather than laying them off outright because people are expecting the economy to recover. I'm struck by the borrowings of some junk-rated companies. They are paying more than 10% yields to borrow money for 4 years. And I'm wondering whether the cure is worse than the ailment. In other words, how many of these companies that are piling on debt and keeping employees online are not going to survive after the pandemic because they've just simply become over-leveraged given economic growth?
It's one of the major issues that, and unintended consequences of the Fed stepping into the market. What you're talking about is the fact that companies that might not have been able to borrow are now able to go to the junk market, able to obtain, as you said, capital at very expensive rates to continue their operations, even though they were probably marginal prior to that recapitalization. So the issue there is, what is the strength of the recovery? And one of the reasons why we're very concerned about aspects of the high-yield bond market is precisely because there is really no trajectory for those companies, given the slowness of what we expect this recovery will be over the next 2 years, to really give them any acceleration in their businesses. So to your point, a lot of companies have seen the postponement of what ultimately will be either the failure of the company, the merger of the company, or the restructuring of the company. And that's really one of the unintended consequences. We're very carefully looking at credits at Citi Private Bank to make sure we do not put client capital into those companies, because even though the yields look very attractive, they are much more risky than they appear.
So, David, can you square that idea, this sort of bearish feel with respect to the high-yield bond market, with your bullish call on small-cap stocks, which often track the high-yield bond market in terms of performance?
That is a great question also, and I think you have to look at the balance sheets of those companies. So what we've done is we've divided the high-yield market itself, and we've taken out all of the energy securities and taken a look at the remainder of the high-yield bond market and the companies that are borrowing those. And then we've further divided those companies into those that have resilient business models, i.e., which have not been as impacted by this market conditions, and specifically associated with healthcare, consumer durables, and things like that. Companies that supply parts and services to industries that are going to recover. An example would be airline services rather than airlines. And by identifying all of those subsegments, you're able to build a portfolio of companies that are very highly likely to rebound and to thrive. And to your other point, to the extent that you identify companies that are either over-levered or where their business models themselves are not in essential categories, we are going to avoid them. But it's this level of discrimination. And by the way, the market has been fairly discriminating in this regard when you take a look at small and mid-cap equity prices. This is the kind of work that you have to do in terms of portfolio construction now that just 6 months ago you really didn't need to do because things were relatively sanguine.
Well, David, thrive under what conditions? Let's get back to the main story. We're reopening here, and there's clearly a massive tail risk of a second wave. Now, for some people, that's not a tail risk, that's a base case. Isn't that likely to linger for the next several months?
So it is a base case, and I think that this whole debate in the market as to whether or not there's a second wave, we are going to see a material increase in the number of coronavirus cases, whether that be in Europe or in the United States. And in the U.S., you're actually going to see potentially even more bad news in that regard because of the nature of the rolling way that they handled the lockdowns and are now handling the reopening of the economy. So the question is, do these increases in virus cases ultimately once again impact the healthcare system? You have to go back to the first premise. The reason why we took the step of lockdown was because we thought we would overwhelm healthcare systems and completely have people literally dying at their homes, dying in the streets, things like that. Unwilling to do that as a society. We then stepped in to stop that. And now we're going to reopen. And the question is, how do we make sure that does not happen again? And there's only two ways for that to be true. One is that the amount of disease goes down, and that's this concept of a trough between the waves. And then the second is that we know that there'll be a second wave barring a treatment or vaccine. And that the question is how big that wave is. And it right now in the United States looks like it could accelerate because of the fact that we didn't tamp down the disease sufficiently.
David, great to get your thoughts on the show. Really appreciate it.
David, thank you.
David Balin, send our best to the team, won't you? City Private Bank's Chief Investment Officer. Let's get you some news, some headlines worldwide from New York City. Here is Michael Barr.
John, Lisa, Tom, good morning. President Donald Trump says the U.S. must reopen even if more Americans get sick or die from the coronavirus. He spoke to ABC News.
Our country has to go back to being our country again. You have people that are not going to stand for this, and I understand them very well. And we are going to put out little embers and little fires and maybe some big fires, but we still have to go back to work.
The president spoke while taking a rare trip out of Washington to tour a mask production plant in Arizona. President Trump's pick to be the nation's top intelligence official, Congressman John Ratcliffe, is adamant that if he is confirmed, he will not allow politics to color information he takes to the president. During his Senate confirmation hearing yesterday, the Texas Republican was asked by Arkansas Republican Senator Tom Cotton about evidence if COVID-19 originated in an open-air food market.
Let me follow up on Senator King's questioning. He asked if you had seen any intelligence that the coronavirus originated in one of the two labs in Wuhan, and you said no. Have you seen any intelligence that supports the Chinese Communist Party's claim that it originated in a seafood market in Wuhan?
No.
Scientists have identified nearly 200 genetic mutations in that causes COVID-19 by analyzing virus genes from over 7,500 people infected globally, an advance that offers clues to direct drugs and vaccine targets. The study, published in the journal Infection, Genetics, and Evolution, characterized patterns of diversity in the genome of the virus, highlighting how it may be adapting and evolving to its human hosts. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg. John, Lisa, Tom.
Michael Barr, thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Equity futures this morning up 22 points on the S&P 500, positive 0.78%. Disney negative in the pre-market, Tom, foregoing the July dividend payment, looking to save about $1.6 billion. Tough times for many of the businesses over at the Walt Disney Company.
Yeah, I'm glad you bring that up. I mean, something, folks, we'll dive into that with Paul Sweeney here later in the hour, but it's just one of the, every company, John, has its own distinctive story. I mean, is how I'd put it.
And as we reopen, those stories are going to come to the forefront again. How do you fill out the theme parks? At what capacity? And what capacity do you need to fill the theme parks to actually make money?
To me, Lisa, this is just fascinating. I mean, every business is for itself.
Yeah, and Disney cutting its dividend for the first time in a long time. Disney Plus giving them a little lift, but not really anywhere close to enough, John.
Your market picking up once again, though. 3 straight days of gains we're on course for. On the S&P 500, we're positive 23. We're up 0.8% from New York. We're live on Bloomberg Radio.
I don't know what to say, I'll say it anyway. Today is
Asset managers who seize change to launch new strategies, add distribution channels, or exploit new technology to re-engineer the investor experience are often rewarded. However, in an industry paralyzed with complexity, few act with agility or decisively. Few run their business strategically. Yet, the most competitive managers in the market know, with the right partner and a flexible operating platform, you can. Go boldly toward change with SEI Investment Manager Services.
Determination and operational strength are both essential factors for growth in asset management. I'm Steve Meyer, President, Head of SEI's Investment Manager Services Division. We know that disruptive forces create opportunities around the world. If you see potential in change, our industry specialists will maximize SEI's integrated platform of data and risk management, global investment operations, compliance support, and investor services to position your asset management business for success. Come grow with us.
With SEI Investment Manager Services, you lead the charge in a competitive marketplace. Learn more at SEIC.com/seize change.
Business is constantly evolving. Is your financial printer evolving to keep ahead of the curve? At Command Financial, we are redefining financial printing by providing industry-leading expertise, leveraging technology, and honing processes and best practices. Every day, Command helps SEC registrants, as well as members of their working groups, including securities attorneys and investment bankers, prepare, file, and disseminate regulatory and disclosure documents, such as registration statements, M&A documents, and mutual fund prospectuses and reports. Command provides a full range of services to help you effectively complete your deal, meet your disclosure requirements, and achieve your shareholder communications objectives. Visit our website at commandfinancial.com and learn how we're evolving, not only with the times, but also with your business requirements. Command Financial, redefining financial printing.
Influential conversation.
Introducing the new single, Impossible. From Central American rock and blues trio, Steady Rolling. Their epic story of love and loss continues. Download and stream the single, Impossible, from the band Steady Rolling, wherever good music lives.
If you want to do something important, work in adult social care.
I'm Georgia. I love social care because you never know what each day will bring. The thing that I would say to anybody that was thinking about a job in social care is go for it.
We are recruiting in your local area. We need you now, and they need you always. Care for others. Make a difference. Today. Search adult social care jobs now.
A half-price dream holiday, wouldn't want to miss that. A takeaway for free, wouldn't want to miss that. And 30 gigs data for just £10 a month on Smarty Mobile. You definitely don't want to miss that. Our Smarty SIM comes packed with 30 gigs of data and unlimited calls and texts for just £10 a month on a 1-month plan. That's why Smarty won Best Value SIM-only network in the U-Switch Mobile Awards 2020. Don't miss out. Search Smarty Mobile. Smarty. Simple, honest mobile. Smarty.co.uk.
Breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow, watching shares of CVS this morning. They're up 4.3%. It beat analyst estimates, boosted by shoppers stockpiling medicines. Shopify reported first quarter revenue that topped analyst estimates as it brings more businesses online during the coronavirus pandemic. Futures are higher, with S&P futures up 22 points. Dow futures up 189 and NASDAQ futures up 68. The DAX in Germany is little changed. 10-year Treasury down 7/32, yield 0.68%. The yield on the 2-year 0.19%. NYMEX crude oil up 3.1% or 76 cents at $25.32 a barrel. And COMEX gold is down 0.2% or $3.30 at $17.0730 an ounce. The euro 1.0808 against the dollar, and the yen 106.19. And that's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Tom, John, and Lisa.
Karen, thank you very much. The President of the United States optimistic about the future. It's been a tough process. There is no question about it. I think our economy is going to be raging next year. The words of the President of the United States in the last 24 hours.
He's out there with a vengeance, John. There's no question about it. Kevin Cirilli joins now, our chief Washington correspondent. Kevin, I don't want to spend much time here on exponential regression. We avoid that on Wednesdays. But the uproar of the president's people trying to fit the message, or fit the statistics rather, to his message signals the energy and desperation that politicians have. I would suggest Governor Cuomo and President Trump are on the same page. They want to open up parts of their economies that can open now. Kevin, how close are we to that?
Well, I don't think that Governor Cuomo and President Trump are articulating their messages in the same way, and I don't think you think that either, Tom. But how close are we? I think, Arizona reopens, this week. You have Georgia reopening. You've got parts of Pennsylvania reopening. I mean, even in Virginia, there's some talk that by June, it's going to be a phased approach, but it's an incredibly localized issue. I think the politics of this was just the first step yesterday. President Trump traveling to Arizona, and according to the poll of polls, he's trailing there 4 to 6 percentage points on the polling averages there to former Vice President Joe Biden. But as we've talked about for weeks now, the president and Republicans made the decision that they want to be on the side of saying that they want to reopen the economy, because that's going to play well to independent voters, according to their internal polling in Michigan and Wisconsin and other parts of the country, in Arizona. And so that's what you're seeing, and that dynamic is only going to intensify. And quite frankly, if you're Biden world, that's going to be something that they have to manage. They don't have to manage the expectation of New York City. They have to manage what the independent voters are going to say in Michigan and Wisconsin.
And Kevin, to some degree, and I'm sure you'll appreciate this is about managing the optics of the situation. I think we've got to be careful around reporting on the substance of it as well. If you take the 3 biggest state economies in America right now, California, Texas, New York, those governors, Newsom, Abbott, Cuomo, are in charge of how those states reopen. Still, the president might be going around saying we need to get back to business, but look at the pace at which we're reopening. Look at the sequencing of it. It's still the governors making those decisions.
Absolutely. And those governors have been really pressured by the business communities within their own states. And to that point, and precisely, I mean, and we talked about this as well, the epicenter of this being in New York City, that medical reality is very different than what Governor Abbott is experiencing in parts of rural Texas. And so as a result of that, politicians in both parties are having to retailer their messages to a local level, because if you go to Michigan, the reality in Detroit is very different than the reality in suburban or in rural Michigan. And so that's quite honestly where this election from a presidential standpoint and the majorities in the House and the Senate will be decided.
Kevin, I want to go back to what Tom started with, this idea of Andrew Cuomo, governor of New York, versus President Trump. And frankly, their differing views on the reopening. Governor Cuomo yesterday saying in a press conference, ultimately this comes down to how many lives are we willing to sacrifice? And he doesn't want to sacrifice any human lives. He doesn't want people to die unnecessarily, saying that human lives are priceless. President Trump taking the opposite tact, saying, will some people be affected? Yes. Will some people be affected badly? Yes. But we have to get our country open, and we have to get it open soon. What do the scientists say in terms of the increase in deaths, illnesses, and perhaps the even strain on the hospital system if we reopen in short order here?
Well, it's a balancing act, and that's why you saw the estimates coming from the administration increase from about 70,000 to now upwards of 100,000 casualties, according to the estimates for COVID-19. It is a dramatic decrease, though, from the worst case scenarios that were originally stated several months ago. So to that point, I do think that the governors, the state business communities in every state, as well as the medical communities, I think that they are able to see through the political theatrics of Cuomo and President Trump.
Okay, enough, Kevin. I mean, you're killing me. Let me give you a concrete example, Kevin. Okay, vet bill looks like David St. Hubbins in Spinal Tap. Vet bill needs a haircut. The only one that touches vet bill is Kyle across Central Park. Lisa, this costs me more money than God. I mean, it's the most expensive haircut in the house.
I'm bleeding for you. Really.
I can't go there, Kevin, because of all the rules and all that. And you can't tell me I can't get a puppy cut right now safely? What's holding us back from allowing Kyle to cut Vet Bill's hair?
I have to be I think we're all in need of a haircut these days, Tom. I
Farrell,
be
particularly.
But I was just reading and going over what's going on all over the country. Delaware's reopening hair salons on Friday. So hair salons are opening, Tom. Hang in there. We're going to be able to get haircuts in a couple of days.
The important issues, Tom. Definitely.
I'm bringing the Pharaoh cut to everyone on air.
We'll all head over to the Pharaoh salon.
John, I'll bring you over to Kyle. I'll bring Kyle. Who's Kyle? John, I'll bring you over to Kyle at a cut above.
Do you get a discount for mentioning Kyle?
Seriously.
Is that what you're up to? I always feel like you're up to something when you do things like this.
The tip I have to unload just to get in line to have this guy touch Vet Bill.
It's going to be a long line. It'll be a long line. Everyone's 6 feet apart. Went to get their dogs cut.
But
Kevin, great to catch up with you.
Kevin, thank you so much. John, seriously, I mean, we got to find paths to safely get these businesses open.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I think the governors are working on that. I just think we've also got to be careful how we report this story, because everyone's going around this morning saying the president is recklessly reopening the economy. It's the governors that are still in charge of how these states reopen.
Exactly.
And it's Governor Newsom of California that was talking optimistically about reopening, who's under his own pressure domestically in the state of California. And Governor Cuomo's moving at his own pace as well. I think it's a mistake to sit on a program like this and broadcast to the world and say the president's leading the reopening of the United States of America, when every state, Tom, is still going its own way.
There's no question. It's state by state. Kevin went through that as well. John, are you most focused on California?
I think so. Let's see how that goes. And let's see how it goes in New York, which is moving really slowly. I'm also focused, like most of the market, on how things are evolving in China and across Europe in places like Germany and Italy as well. Much more on that still to come through this program, live on Bloomberg Radio. This is Bloomberg Surveillance with futures positive 22. We're up 0.8% on the S&P 500.
What's the true value of your custodial relationship? Ben Harrison of BNY Mellon's Pershing explains.
As sophisticated investors demand more from their advisors, advisory firms, in turn, need to rely on their custodian to help them grow their complex businesses. At BNY Mellon's Pershing, supporting the rapid growth of RIAs is our number one priority. We understand what it means to deliver true value to our clients who are looking for a custodian that is aligned with their best interest and delivers high-value solutions, all in an open architecture environment with flexibility, choice, and transparency. Learn why so many of the largest advisory firms turn to us for the financial strength, resiliency, and high-touch service that BNY Mellon Pershing provides. When you work with Pershing, we put your business first. Can your custodian say that?
Learn more at Pershing.com or call 800-445-4467. Pershing Advisor Solutions, LLC. Member FINRA SIPC.
Have you wanted to speak a new language, but you thought it'd be too hard or take too much time? Then go to Babbel.com, download the app, and try it for free. In just 15 minutes a day, you'll be on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. And right now, you can try Babbel for free. Babbel starts out teaching you words and phrases by matching them with pictures. You won't believe how easy the interactive program is. Soon the sentences get a little bigger, and before you know it, you're having simulated conversations voiced by native speakers. And because Babbel is crafted by language experts and uses the spaced repetition method, in just 10 to 15 minutes a day, you'll be speaking the language of your choice with real confidence. With Babbel, you can speak a language. Just go to Babbel.com and start your first lesson in the language of your choice for free. Download the Babbel app or go to Babbel.com and try it for free. That's Babbel.com.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. CBS Health.
This is a message from the government about the emergency measures to support the economy during the period of disruption caused by the coronavirus. To help you, your business, and your workers affected, you can apply for cash grants, business rate holidays, statutory sick pay relief packages, as well as the coronavirus job retention and self-employment income support schemes. For information, go to gov.uk/business-support now.
A half-price dream holiday, wouldn't want to miss that. A takeaway for free, wouldn't want to miss that.
And 30 gigs data for just £10 a month on Smarty Mobile. You definitely don't want to miss that. Our Smarty SIM comes packed with 30 gigs of data and unlimited calls and texts for just £10 a month on a 1-month plan. That's why Smarty won Best Value SIM-only network in the U-Switch Mobile Awards 2020. Don't miss out. Search Smarty Mobile. Smarty. Simple, honest mobile. Smarty.co.uk.
Get your cook on with Asda. With Butcher Selection quarter pounder beef burgers, get a 4-pack for just £2.28. And salmon fillets, get a 2-pack for only £2.97. So dinner's always a winner. At Asda, we're committed to low prices every day on the quality products you need. Asda. Selected stores and lines subject to availability.
While most of us are looking out for each other at this time, sadly, fraudsters are trying to take advantage of the situation. Here's Chris Ainsley from Santander with advice for keeping your money safe.
Please be wary of people you've met online who claim to be stranded abroad and urgently need money. Always take time to think before you act, and if you think you're the victim of fraud, then let your bank know right away.
For more advice on keeping your money safe, visit santander.co.uk.
Broadcasting live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studio in New York. Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM Channel 119 and around the globe. The Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Surveillance.
From New York City, this is Bloomberg Surveillance for our audience worldwide. We are live on Bloomberg Radio, 2 hours away from the opening bell. Equity futures positive around about 0.8%, up around about 22 points on the S&P 500. In foreign exchange, only one currency pair to watch at the moment, euro dollar, a bounce off the lows of the session, a break of 108 very briefly. Right now, 108.06, a negative a third of 1%. These are the words that came from Paolo Gentiloni, the Economy and Financial Affairs Commissioner for the EU. Such divergence poses a threat to the single market and the Eurozone, yet it can be mitigated through decisive joint European action. Those words, Tom, coming after some pretty dreadful forecasts for growth across the Eurozone, and so not some pleasing forecasts for what would happen to debt to GDP ratios in places like Greece and Italy.
Yeah, a huge economic experiment. Of course, it continues forward. Bipin Rai joins us right now with CIBC. Bipin, I want to begin this discussion by explaining a key idea. For our American listeners, why does the European experiment matter? For our American listeners, why should they worry about weak euro versus yen and versus Swiss franc?
Well, I mean, when it comes to the foreign exchange markets, I mean, most of the transactions conducted daily are in euro dollar. So if you do see a weakness in the euro, that's going to matter for the U.S. dollar. And, of course, there's several different or many different businesses in the U.S. that depend on the fluctuations of the dollar for their daily business needs.
$18 trillion economy. It's not a joke, is it, right, Bipan? It's a real story. And the worry about redenomination risk flaring up again, I think, is very real at the moment. What can they do from the policy side of things to try and prevent that from happening?
With respect to the euro, it's really all about whether or not they can come together with some form of pan-European stimulus package. And so far, they've shown that they can. And as a result, you're seeing this premium priced into the euro because, again, it really looks like fragmentation risk is rearing its head again. I mean, one does get the sense that it's a little bit overblown. I mean, I certainly think that the German court ruling and the panic over that is overblown. I mean, what we've seen from the past when it comes to the German Constitutional Court is that they'll listen to some, and they'll empathize with some of the claimants, but in the end, they'll tend to rule against them. So, again, this isn't the end for the euro. At this point, it's a bump in the road. But we do expect that if things do get really bad, that there will be measures put in place to support the monetary union, and euro dollar probably still it remains well above current levels.
Perhaps this is a bump in the road, but Paolo Gentiloni is representing a view that a lot of people have. Certainly, it's getting priced increasingly into Italian bond yields. And I'm just wondering that the main opposition here is Germany and the Netherlands, right? The idea of not issuing debt tied to the entire region. How close are they to being convinced that this is the perhaps best viable option going forward to get this economy going again after the pandemic?
I don't think they're close at all. I think there's really going to be a need for other types of coercion, or at least we need to get to further down the line when it comes to the breaking point to convince everyone that debt mutualization is probably the most sustainable path forward. But again, given the demographics of the Eurozone and how much of a stance that populism is starting to has taken hold over the last couple of years, we're not going to get there until we're close to the brink. And certainly when it comes to the European economy, we're still a long way away from that. So again, it's really going to be about whether or not Italy is willing to tap into the ESM credit line, and whether or not the ECB is okay using the OMT tool to really back up or really conduct additional asset purchases going forward.
Wait, you said that we have to get close to the brink in the Euro region, and yet the region's economy is set to shrink 7.7% this year. How close do we have to get? What are you looking for in order to be at the brink, in order to push them towards some sort of common debt offering?
Yeah, let's have a look at what it looks like when the demand shock is over, or at least once we start to see economies reopen and the data starts to trickle in. I suspect we're going to be reopening into a recessionary scenario. And if it is a deeper recessionary scenario, and if there is more signs of a structural change in the European economy rather than just a transient shock, then I suspect that's probably when the EU leaders are going to look at potentially, other more controversial measures. Again, at this point, we're still too early in the reopening process to make that call.
Conditioned by what happened in 2011, 2012. The brink back then was a yield of 6-7%. Right now, a 10-year in Italy, 186. The forecast, though, Bipan, and I think this is the worry, the debt GDP ratio in Italy is set to climb to 160% from 130. Now, if we were talking about Germany with a debt to GDP ratio of that, not a problem. The United States, not a problem. Italy, with the growth trajectory it has, with the problems with the ECB that we still have just in terms of perception, climbing to 160, getting Greece out to 200, they're not good numbers, are they?
No, they're not. But the good thing for Italy, especially when it comes to the debt to GDP ratio, is that interest rate levels are going to remain low for a long time. The stock of debt isn't really the problem. The problem is whether or not do we start to see the cost of that debt start to rise. And at this point, we're looking at a deflationary scenario on balance for the rest of 2020. Into 2021, it might start becoming a bit of an issue. And again, at that point, you really need to start seeing an outperforming Greek economy to get that denominator rising faster than the numerator for debt to GDP. But at this point, we're not too concerned about the debt to GDP ratio. Right now, the primary concern should be to get the economy on a path to recovery.
If you're just joining us, Bipin Rai with the CIBC Capital Markets North America. Bipin, I've got to ask you about Loonie. We don't talk about it enough. I get all sorts of hate mail across Canada because we never talk CAD. Okay, let's do it right now. Canada, like nowhere, has Dutch disease. You've got an Eastern Industrial Canada and the Maritimes, and you've got this oil disaster out west. What's your call on dollar Canada, given the massive partition of the Canadian economic experiment?
Right. At this point, we're expecting dollar Canada to remain range bound. It's certainly not the. Yeah, I know.
You can't give me something bolder than that. You sound Canadian.
It's typical Canadian. It's really going to be a boring currency for the next little while. Relatively speaking, to some of the other currencies out there, we don't have the. Really the relationship with China to drive growth higher. We haven't really been as sheltered as, say, the Australian dollar or the New Zealand dollar from the COVID-19 shock. And really, the oil, the weakness in oil prices is offsetting some of the more, tailwinds when it comes to a weaker U.S. dollar globally, or at least for dollar CAD. So again, we're sort of stuck in this 138 to 143 range for the time being. Now, if you ask me where the risks are, over the longer term, it certainly points towards a weaker Canadian dollar, considering, again, we're still expecting the Bank of Canada to implement additional easing measures, which could mean an expanding balance sheet, and generally that's not good news for domestic currency.
Bipin Rai, thank you so much. He is with CIBC. Just brilliant there on Canada, the loony, as they say. The Bloomberg NJIT STEM Report, always brought to you by New Jersey Institute of Technology, ranked in the top 2% nationally for alumni mid-career earnings and number one for student upward economic mobility. Learn more at njit.edu. Here's Bob Boone.
Tom, Lisa, Jonathan, good morning. Here's what's making news in science, technology, engineering, and math. Exactly how far are you willing to go in giving governments and big corporations access to the homing device you carry around every day? The smartphone you carry in your pocket or purse is being looked at as an important way to help stem the spread of the new coronavirus, but questions about privacy are being raised over using smartphones to handle contact tracing. Apps being developed to monitor new COVID-19 outbreaks will let governments and medical authorities know where a person has gone and with whom they have come in contact, and match that information to a database of those who have been infected by the coronavirus. Left unclear is how such monitoring may intrude on our privacy, even as it can help protect public health. As millions of people are quarantined across the world, many of them doing their work from home, the importance of the internet and connection speeds has become a prime focus. While communication satellites get much of the attention for those things, you may not know the majority of the internet is actually transmitted underneath the ocean over a vast network of submarine cables. Despite fears that communication networks would fail under unprecedented demand, the industry turns out to have taken the surge in stride. And according to the research firm Telegeography, there's actually even room to grow by adding extra capacity to the global web of undersea cables. That's the Bloomberg NJIT STEM report. Tom, Lisa, John.
Bob Moon, thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Here's your news, your headlines worldwide. Here's Michael Barr.
John, Lisa, Tom, good morning. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi is pushing Democrats to get out of the gate first with another multi-billion-dollar virus relief package. Pelosi wants to give the House leverage in negotiations with Senate Republicans who are reluctant to any new round of expansive aid. President Trump is pushing his own set of counter-demands, including changes to tax laws that would complicate negotiations on an eventual bill. As the Trump administration starts to wind down the coronavirus task force, there seems to be a separation of positions between the president and the doctors and scientists advising him. Bloomberg's Ed Baxter has the story.
The president, in an interview on ABC, says he closed down flights from China against the advice of Drs. Fauci and Birx.
What I did is I said against many people, including Anthony Fauci, who I like very much, including Deborah, who I like very much, the doctors, and many other people. They said, don't ban China. It's going to blow over. And they said this at the end of February.
That is, Dr. Fauci has been publicly saying that a quick government opening will cause a spike in illness and death. In San Francisco, I'm Ed Baxter, Bloomberg Radio.
The scientist who was in charge of finding a vaccine for COVID-19 is slamming the Trump administration in a new complaint. Dr. Rick Bright, former head of vaccine development at the Department of Health and Human Services, says his warnings about the virus were ignored. Bright, who was ousted from his job, filed a whistleblower complaint. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg. John.
Michael Barr, sir, thank you very much. Thank you. Let's get you up to speed on some of the earnings out there as well. GM, General Motors, absolutely flying in early trading, up 5.5%. Huge beat. The profit coming in at 62 cents a share. The estimate around about 30 cents a share. Pickup trucks, the story here, Tom.
Yeah.
Pickup trucks in the first quarter, sales up 27%.
Yeah, there's no question about the pickup trucks. That's been out there for a day or so. John, what really sticks out to me is a headline. When you put a date on it, that's good news to President Trump.
May
and that's General Motors to Canada. General Motors to Canada manufacturing operations May 18. That's impressive.
U.S. and Canada ops reopening May 18th. That's the target restart. But I think that's some indication, Lisa, of where things are going, just in terms of this reopening. The C-suite, the multinationals, the big manufacturers, they're starting to prepare this month to get things going again in America.
Yeah, my big question is how many employees are going to come back, right? You have on one hand, people are looking very much for a salary and for some sort of normalcy in their lives. On the other hand, you have the situation with, say, the meat processing plants in the United States where they're saying, look, we need to stay open, and the absenteeism is just climbing through the roof because people don't want to get sick. So again, it goes back to what kind of reopening are we going to have? GM certainly with a tailwind here, given their cash position, but it really raises a question about just sort of social behavior.
And how safely they could reopen as well, which I think is the issue you're touching on, Lisa. And I think the good news is that some of these big multinationals have the experience of having a base in China and reopening in China in the last couple of months. The lessons learned from there, just in terms of the operation and bringing them over to America. And I found that really interesting just listening to the companies over the last month or so on that issue. Much more on that still to come on this program. General Motors in the pre-market now up 6.5%. Equity futures on the S&P 500. We have a nice little bump there too for a third straight day, up 19 points on the S&P 500. Positive.
With a Bloomberg Business of Sports report, I'm Michael Barr. Major League Baseball's average salary ahead of a postponed opening day remained at around $4.4 million for the fifth straight season. That's according to a study of contracts by the Associated Press. Following an off-season when Garrett Cole, Steven Strasburg, Anthony Rendon, and Christian Yelich all agreed to $200 million-plus deals, the flattened salary curve is evidence of a shrinking portion of the pie for baseball's middle class. The NFL is moving its 5-game schedule for London and Mexico City this season back to U.S. stadiums because of the coronavirus pandemic. Cricket will lose £380 million or $473 million if the coronavirus crisis prevents the games from being played this summer. That's according to Tom Harrison, the England and Wales Cricket Board chief executive. And that's a Bloomberg Business of Sports report. I'm Michael Barr.
Hey, y'all, Jeff Foxworthy here. Now, if you've ever found yourself repeating the same thing over and over for 75 years, you might be Smokey Bear.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
That's why I'm filling in for Smokey to switch things up, because there's a lot more to say. And I should know because my grandfather was a firefighter. And one of the things he taught me is that the people that love the outdoors the most are often the ones accidentally starting wildfires, which means always BYOB. No, bring your own bucket to the campfire. And be extra careful with things like burning yard trimmings. Don't just walk away, or chances are you might be starting a wildfire. So for the love of the outdoors, go to SmokeyBear.com to learn more about wildfire prevention. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service, your state forester, and the Ad Council.
Global News 24.
Behind the highlight reels, championship rings, and colossal paychecks, there are sports stories that fuel, deepen, and even challenge our love for the game. For true tales of underdogs, anti-heroes, and game-changing innovators, explore a sports documentary on TuneIn, like Sports Wars, telling the origin stories of classic rivalries, Raise Sports, about the concussion crisis that threatens football's future, and Dunkumentaries, a podcast devoted to the beauty and power of the slam dunk. For these and more, search sports documentaries on TuneIn. Be part of the college sports conversation on TuneIn. Hear the latest storylines around SEC football with the Paul Feinbaum Show.
I distinctly remember when you were hired, and I must say most of us thought you were out of your mind, giving up. I wouldn't call it a cush job because you were traveling across the country.
Get your college hoops fix with college basketball talk on NBC Sports.
Headed by Shabazz Napier, that also included Amita Brima, who is in and around the NBA ranks right now, and DeAndre Daniels, who was the 37th pick in the 2014 NBA draft. So my question to you is...
Or listen to the daily news from around the wide world of college football with College Football Live.
I would go with Utah. I think Utah is the better team. And I know I'm talking to an Oklahoma guy, but listen, and it may be recency bias having watched Utah last week and doing that game, but I just think they're a more complete football.
Discover these and more college sports podcasts right here on TuneIn.
A day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow. General Motors earnings topping estimates. Shares up 7% in early trading. S&P futures also higher, up 19 points. Dow futures up 155. NASDAQ futures up 63. 10-year Treasury down 4/30 seconds. Yield 0.67%. And NYMEX crude oil up 0.2% or 6 cents at $24.61 a barrel. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Tom, John, and Lisa.
Karen, thanks so much. This has been one of the pleasant surprises of this tragedy. A weekly conversation, even more than that, with the Lieutenant Governor of the the Empire State. Kathy Hochul joins us right now. Kathy, I want to ask a dumb question. Government can affect policy that makes things easy. Why can't the state of New York say you can't walk on the streets of New York State without a mask on and those plastic gloves on, those latex gloves on? Wouldn't that immediately build confidence?
We build confidence by having the people who listen to us every single day as we give very transparent press conferences and tell it like this. We tell them the truth. We tell them that if they wear the mask, they can not just save themselves, but also their families, and they have a responsibility. But we don't have the resources nor the desire to have a police state where we go through and have to try to convince 19 million people to adhere. We'd love to, but we're not going to. That's not who we are. It's not our character, but we want that same result. And we are appealing to people and their desire to protect themselves and their families and friends and neighbors. And thus far, I have to say, we are starting to see some cracks in this, but people have really uniformly throughout the state been adhering to this. And that's really actually quite astounding that they are the ones, the New Yorkers are the ones who really changed this trend. If they hadn't been doing the social distancing and now the mask, we'd be in a far worse place. So you'll see outliers, and we hope we can bring them back into the fold. But right now, I think we're doing very well.
Lieutenant Governor, when we talk about a May 15th reopening in New York, we are talking about upstate. We are not talking about New York City. How much longer do you think it will take for the major metropolitan areas in the region to reopen?
We have put in place a number of metrics that are clear. We see that we're using upstate, first of all, and that is to look at the hospitalization rate, the number of ICU beds being used, the rate of infection, how it's spreading, also the ability to have more diagnostic testing available, as well as contact tracers. So the benefit for New York City is that we'll be able to trial run this upstate. I'm managing parts of upstate, Western New York area, and looking at these metrics, do we hit them by May 15th? If so, we will slowly open manufacturing, some retail where you could pick up on the curb, and construction. This is the same model that we would use downstate, but then we're going to take 2 weeks and test and see whether or not the numbers have gone upwards, downwards, stay the same. And so it's this data that's going to help us drive the reopening of New York City, which we have to get right. We cannot do it a day too early, but not a day longer than necessary. We don't want to have the economy held back any longer than is necessary, but also safety is going to continue to be our guiding star. So I think it's good for New York City. I don't think there's a single person in New York City who thinks they're ready. They know that. They're still seeing the numbers. But upstate, we can do a trial run of this and then implement that in New York City in a few weeks. So we don't have a timeline for New York City just yet.
Kathy, I'm going to ask a delicate question, and I asked it with the deepest amount of understanding and sympathy for the position you're in. When Governor Cuomo says the faster we reopen, the lower the economic cost, but the more lives are lost. You guys are in a really tough position now where you have to balance reopen the economy with loss of life. And when that's communicated from Governor Cuomo, it comes across really sincerely, very authentically, and I think it resonates with a lot of people listening to these news conferences. But behind closed doors, when you have to make that calculation, can you give us a deeper understanding of how you make those decisions?
It's heart-wrenching. No one in public life ever expects they're going to have to make these types of decisions. We go into public life to make people's lives better, give them education, health care, opportunity for good jobs. You never think that you're going to have to be in the position to determine between life and death. But it's very clear to us. We will choose life over death. That has been what has guided us. It's not a gray area. It's black and white. And we also know that you can't have a livelihood without a life. So people talk about we have to bring back the economy. Yes, we do. But we have to bring it back in a thoughtful way that will protect people's lives and also give employees and customers the assurance that when they come to your establishment, they will be safe. That's why we have to get this right. We could flip a switch and open it tomorrow, but there's not a single New Yorker, very few, who think that it's safe enough to go out there now when they're still seeing the numbers that we are. We will get to that point, and I'm going to tell you right now, we are already planning for a post-pandemic future that's even better. Not just reopening our economy, but reimagining areas like the workplace, how we can make it more flexible for people, reimagining education and making sure it's more accessible through technology and all the experience that our teachers have had to go through teaching children at home in our colleges and how they've had to adapt. We have an opportunity here. to make this state even stronger than before. And that's what we're doing, but we're going to get it right.
Lieutenant Governor, you said that there really isn't gray area. I am guessing that President Trump may agree. He was talking about how there are losses on either side. You're seeing mental illness rise. You're seeing the concern about substance abuse, domestic violence. Even Governor Cuomo has talked about this. It's not necessarily all things being equal. I'm just wondering how you weigh things on that side as the jobless rate soars to levels not seen in modern history.
Kim, this is unprecedented. We're not trying to increase the jobs rate. We're trying to save people's lives. But we're very thoughtful in this. That's why we've put in place different opportunities for people to get assistance. We have a hotline, an emotional health hotline for not just first responders, who I'm sure are going to have lifelong impacts on their mental health because of what they've had to see and endure during this crisis, but people who've been isolated and people who are lonely, and those are dealing with the havoc in their lives from having lost a job when they never dreamed they'd be having to spend hours on a phone trying to get an unemployment application in. So we know there's a severe human toll, and we have assistance for them. We have over 90,000 people answering phone calls to help them. But at the end of the day, New Yorkers are resilient. We are a tough bunch. We will come out of this stronger as long as we continue to protect each other with the social distancing and the mask. And it's not an easy equation, but we're going to get there.
Lieutenant Governor, thank you so much. Kathy Hochul, this is a joy, folks, to do this with the Lieutenant Governor every week. John, we've got ADP out. I'm going to call it, less than 20 minutes maybe? It could be an ugly number.
Look, we're expecting more ugly numbers, aren't we, from the labour market? The ADP report, we're expecting, Tom, negative 20.5 million. That is the estimate. These are just numbers that we can't get our head around. And I think, Tom, something we can discuss over the next couple of days is something Mohammed El-Arian brought up a number of weeks ago. Just the cognitive limitations to get your head around a number that large. I think that's a real thing, a real difficulty for a lot of people, including people in this market.
And then, and I'm sure what Dr. El-Arian would suggest is the interdependencies, the interrelationships of numbers we can't get our head around is just as important as the single numbers.
Really good point.
Some of it, if you will, is extraordinary.
The jobs reports start in 20 minutes with the ADP report. Tomorrow, initial jobless claims. Friday, non-farm payrolls. Your market this morning, positive 18 points on the S&P 500, up by 0.6%. In the bond market, your treasuries as follows. A 10-year yield up around about 2 basis points to 0.678%. From New York, this is Bloomberg.
"25 years ago, NJIT...
Introducing the new single, Impossible. From Central American rock and blues trio, Steady Rollin'. Their epic story of love and loss continues. Download and stream the single, Impossible, from the band Steady Rollin', wherever good music lives.
The trampoline that makes Dad feel like a kid again. The projector that turns film night into outdoor cinema night. The hot tub that transforms your garden into a spa retreat. With a choice of ways to pay, you can make the most of family time. You can say yes when it matters most at very.co.uk. Goods and services provided by Shop Direct Home Shopping Limited. Credit provided. Subject to status by Shop Direct Finance Company Limited. 18+.
A half-price dream holiday, wouldn't want to miss that. A takeaway for free, wouldn't want to miss that. And 30 gigs data for just £10 a month on Smarty Mobile. You definitely don't want to miss that. Our Smarty SIM comes packed with 30 gigs of data and unlimited calls and texts for just £10 a month on a 1-month plan. That's why Smarty won Best Value SIM-only network in the U-Switch Mobile Awards 2020. Don't miss out. Search Smarty Mobile. Smarty. Simple, honest mobile. Smarty.co.uk.
This is a message from the government about the emergency measures to support the economy during the period of disruption caused by the coronavirus. To help you, your business, and your workers affected, you can apply for cash grants, business rate holidays, statutory sick pay relief packages, as well as the coronavirus job retention and self-employment income support schemes. For information, go to gov.uk/business-support now.
When next in Asda, why not try our new mobile Scan and Go app? Simply download the app, scan your shop with your mobile, and pack as you go. Then head to the self-checkout to pay. Quick, easy, and contact-free, so you have more time to get your cook on. Asda. Mobile data charges may apply. Suitable for iOS 9 and Android 5 or above. Selected stores subject to availability.
Where will 2020 take you? Somewhere where people care. About each other. About our planet. About creating a better world for everyone. And becoming the best versions of yourselves. Join a community of like-minded individuals at the University of Winchester. Make sure to accept your offer by the UCAS deadline and visit our website to find out more. See the bigger picture. Be the difference. Go to winchester.ac.uk.
While most of us are looking out for each other at this time, sadly, fraudsters are trying to take advantage of the situation. Here's Chris Ainsley from Santander with advice for keeping your money safe.
Please be wary of people you've met online who claim to be stranded abroad and urgently need money. Always take time to think before you act, and if you think you're the victim of fraud, then let your bank know right away.
For more advice on keeping your money safe, visit santander.co.uk.
Talk about the losers in a trade war.
You benefit if you're just further away from China.
So that you can too.
What are the ramifications if she crumbles or doesn't crumble?
Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business, Radio.com, and iHeartRadio apps, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening. From the financial capital of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio. This is Bloomberg Surveillance Economics.
Certainly we've got to put a floor under the economic carnage.
Markets didn't believe the coronavirus would take down the world economy.
Finance.
The sellers are not necessarily finished, but quite exhausted.
Investment.
That's the reality that we have to settle ourselves to. This is the start of a depression.
We're going to have a bounce back when everything is open. The question is, what is the shape of the economy from there?
Bloomberg Surveillance with Tom Keene, Jonathan Farrell, and Lisa Abramowitz on Bloomberg Radio.
Good morning, everyone. John Farrell, Lisa Abramowitz, and Tom Keene. Without question, the three most important days in the history of this show on the American labor economy. It is about jobs. Having a job is the most important thing in America, and it is a shattered America that begins here in 15 minutes with the ADP report on to 3 million estimated claims tomorrow, and then the stunning statistic of 15, even 16% unemployment rate on Friday. John, everything will be pushed aside.
Destruction, numbers we've never seen before. Negative 20 million on the ADP report, potentially in 14 minutes' time. Tom, a conversation we've got to have is how temporary this is. And recall that this is part of a policy decision, a really difficult policy decision to shut down the economy. That's why we see these numbers. As we reopen, as we begin to reopen, continue to reopen more of the economy in the months to come, how quickly will this labour market recover? How temporary are these job losses?
I've seen the alphabet soup disappear here over the last couple days as that temporary word really begins to be defined rather. Lisa, within all your reading, where do you see temporary right now? Are we out 6 months? Are we out 6 years?
I think people are looking at a steeper but shorter downturn this time around. That said, the job destruction, more than 10 years worth of jobs destroyed in 1 month, raises a lot of questions about what these companies will look like on the other side, especially as the likes of Avis and Norwegian Cruise Lines borrow money at more than 10% yields. How are they going to emerge from this in a position to hire back all the people that they laid off? I don't know the answer to that.
And we see the bankruptcies that we saw over the weekend as well. John, before we go to our esteemed guest, what I find fascinating here is how America is treating this labor crisis versus the United Kingdom. To you, what's the key distinction?
Well, different fallback options, different welfare systems, Tom. That's the distinction through this whole period. Who was well set up, prepared to deal with a situation like this? I don't think any particular country gets ready for the pandemic of the kind that we've seen in the last couple of months with any real seriousness, Tom. And I know everyone sits here with 2020 hindsight about the shoulda, woulda, coulda, or what we should have done over the last 5 years. But no one really expects it to happen, do they? The fact of the matter is, it has. And I wonder how it will change the politics around the labour market for years to come.
Well, it will be interesting. Joining us right now from J.P. Morgan is John Norman. He has been a wonderful supporter of all that we do at Surveillance because of a wonderful synthesis in his research note across equities, bonds, currencies, commodities. John, just exceptional historic import coming up in 3 days. What do you hear from Bruce Kasman and your economists that you fold into market choice?
To me, the most important takeaway from the work of our economists is that this is going to be an extremely abnormal recovery, meaning it's going to take years to recoup the lost output and the lost jobs. And that usually equates to a multi-year process of recouping the lost profits. That's got to be a constraint on how much markets can retrace, even if they go up. So that shape of the recovery, to me, is a lot of what anchors the views on the asset markets going forward.
The views on the asset markets don't seem that dire if you take a look at stock prices, particularly within the tech sector. Do you think that they're accurately pricing in, and I'm not just talking about big tech, just broadly, do you think that equities are pricing in what you're talking about, which is a prolonged period of time with these destroyed jobs not coming back anytime soon?
No, I think they're priced over optimistically, meaning